Hey everybody, welcome back to the ABCs of RPGs, where we teach you the basics of tabletop role-playing games. My name's Spencer, I'm going to be the game master for this evening, and we are playing Cyberpunk Red. Now, players, or should I say, Chumbas, can you introduce yourself? Dalton?
I don't know you well enough for you to call me Chumba. But yeah, hi, I'm Dalton. Was there anything else you wanted me to say, or just introduce myself?
That's good. You can just say that.
Yeah, I'm Dalton. I've got he/him pronouns.
Dan?
Okay. Hi, I'm Dan. Also he/him pronouns.
Perfect.
And yeah, I'm gonna do what you guys didn't do for me. The next person, Ashley.
Hey everyone, my name is Ashley. My pronouns are she, her. I still don't think that Spencer said this, but we are playing Cyberpunk Red today, which I'm super pumped for.
I did.
Or maybe he did. I didn't sleep at all
the
last
second
night.
time.
No.
It's okay. I work nights. And finally, Christian.
Hi, my name's Christian. My pronouns are he/him as well. I am just excited to play this RPG. It's super cool.
Yeah, you've been wanting to do this for a little bit, right?
Yeah, it's very much down my alley. It's got a lot of cool stuff going on. So.
Sweet. Okay, I'm not gonna talk like this the entire time. And actually, I might take off my glasses. We'll see how long I can actually see.
If you don't, I will disown you. Like you have to talk like it the whole time.
The whole time, Cyberpunk.
Like,
okay.
Some sort of weird mix between Johnny Silverhand and like I don't know. Like,
Wake the fuck up, samurai. We got a city to burn.
Yeah. Pee Wee Herman. That's the other person I was thinking of. Johnny Silverhand and Pee Wee Herman. That's you.
I'm not sure. I didn't know that combo could exist, but here we are.
Yeah, that guy died recently, by the way.
I did hear that. I think yeah. So
a lot of people die in the world of Cyberpunk.
So we're talking about Pee Wee Herman in Cyberpunk, not Pee Wee Herman in real life.
Yeah, he lived in the world of Cyberpunk. He lived to like the 2060s.
Yeah, well, not only that,
Then he flatlined, yo.
He has cyberware installed in his arms to let him have like super
jerk better in the adult movie theaters.
Yeah. Like he just like rapid jerk off speed, you know?
Persimmon!
Sorry, Ash, he actually did that.
I will say that, speaking of that, not too long ago, like a week ago or something, or a few days ago, was the actual date in which some things happened, the bombings happened at Arasaka Tower. In the lore of Cyberpunk.
Yeah, last weekend there was a whole bunch of like community events and one-offs and stuff that they ran.
Whoa.
I don't know if Christian was trying to avoid lore spoilers or not, so I won't say why that date was important, but...
No, that's okay. I was actually going to talk about that. Because
sorry, if that is lore spoilers. Technically, we are past that point. And
I mean, it is kind of like their universe is 9/11, so...
Yeah. So speaking of which, let me start talking about the history and everything so we can kind of get into it. So basically, first, let's start as Cyberpunk as a genre. So Cyberpunk as a genre is like typically like a ultra-capitalist dystopian future. Some inspirations for this kind of genre that kind of like, I think it picked up in the 80s, but it started before that with like Neuromancer and stuff like that. But other influences, like movie specific, is going to be like Blade Runner, think Akira, Elysium. That was a movie that came out like 10 years ago starring Ashley. Who is the guy in it? Matt Damon, yeah.
Matt Damon.
Personally, my favorite cyberpunk movie is RoboCop. I freaking love that movie. When I went in, like, I didn't watch it for years because I thought it was like, oh, it's RoboCop. That seems so lame. And then I watched it and I was like, holy crap, this movie's dark. Very, very good movie if nobody's seen it. If you guys need more inspiration, we're going to be referencing the Cyberpunk Core Rulebook, a Cyberpunk Red Core Rulebook, and on page 389, there are more suggestions for inspiration for the cyberpunk genre. But before we go any further, I want to ask, what is everybody's favorite cyberpunk thing? What's the thing that you're like, oh yeah, I love the cyberpunk kind of genre or feel? What's everybody's thing that they like? Can be a movie, can be a video game, can be a book.
So for me, it's a book, and it's the book that inspired Blade Runner, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep.
Mm.
Just really, really big fan. I've actually never seen the movie Blade Runner, which is like interesting. I've read the book, but I haven't seen Blade Runner, so I don't know the differences really.
There's a lot.
I've heard that there's a lot, so I'd be really curious to see. I mean, like that's a pretty big bucket list movie to see. Mm-hmm. So I'll eventually see it, but
Dan.
Anyway,
Who wrote that book, Dan?
Philip K. Dick. Philip K. Dick. So I think Rick Decker's a really interesting character throughout.
Super interesting.
Like the different things that happen and like the way he reacts to them. I don't want to like give away any of it because if you see Blade Runner, you kind of know the plot, kind of.
Well,
it's really an up to interpretation kind of thing, even in the movie, isn't it?
Yeah. It's interesting because like you'll see things in the cyberpunk universe that are things that are present in other cyber works. Like for example, the thing that speaks to me because I've also read Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. Animals not being around is very present in Cyberpunk Red. Oh, yeah. Like there's like seeing a real life animal like is like super rare. Like it's either like genetically altered to survive in this like bad environment, or it's a robot. Like that's something that's present in.
Or if you're like, if I remember right, there are like occasional stray dogs and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And like, who knows what's going on in Europe?
Right. Yeah.
It's all cool out there.
It's so interesting because like it's clear that like in the cyberpunk universe, in this Cyberpunk Red universe, that there's a whole big world, but we only focus on Night City, which is like the Pacific Northwest. Like that's the only snippet that we get into. So what's everybody else's? Yeah, go ahead.
Night City not LA?
Was Night City Pacific North? Yeah, I thought Night City was LA.
Was it LA? I'm so sorry. I thought it was like Seattle. My bad.
Nah, bro, it's LA.
It's definitely California.
I'm the game master.
The desert.
You know what? Night City is where I want it to be.
Night City is in our heart. Night City is the friends we made along the way. Night City is the enemies we made along the way.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I can go next. I am a huge fan of Terminator. I know that Terminator like takes place in the modern day, but I did some quick Googling, and according to a random guy on Reddit, they were arguing that Terminator is still considered cyberpunk because it is based on this kind of dystopian, super technologically advanced future, and it just happens to take place in the modern day. Personally, big fan specifically of the I'll be back scene, especially. Also, if I can have a runner-up, Ghost in the Shell is wonderful. It's a really good anime movie that has a lot of kind of a lot of those more stereotypical cyberpunk elements that you think of.
Oh yeah, Ghost in the Shell is super cyberpunky.
Yeah. Have you seen the actual anime at all?
I've only seen the movie, actually. I have not seen the show. I've heard it's good.
Yeah, I've seen bits and pieces of the show, but what I've seen I've liked. I remember like seeing it come on like Toonami as a kid.
Mm-hmm. It was
It's
definitely like
not
an
a very
early Toonami thing.
kid-friendly anime.
And
Well,
Toonami wasn't
beyond
kid
it,
friendly
like-
at that time.
Yeah. I mean, I remember watching DBZ at like 6 years old, like just being like,
Yeah, Goku's getting a hole blown in him.
Oh, damn it.
uh-oh. Uh-oh.
But
Where'd he go?
It happened.
It happened.
It happened.
And we don't even
It's
know
okay.
how to
What's-
fix it.
What's wrong?
He's
I'm gonna
ascended
go
to
into my
heaven.
voice and video
Oh,
settings. And,
God.
no, he
He's chipped
fused-
in.
He hit just like in Ghost to the Cell. Oh wait, that's a spoiler. I'm not gonna say that.
I can go next. I've got a whole bunch of. It's hard to pick favorite like cyberpunk things just because of how much stuff.
Is-
Choose one, and that is
going
the
on.
only thing you can ever cyberpunk.
Only thing I can
left.
ever talk about ever again.
Yeah.
Well, if only just because like I don't think anybody else is going to mention it. I love The Running Man, the Stephen King book, and technically the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie.
I haven't seen that.
I haven't
Super
even like heard of it.
super
Is that
super
bad?
cool book. It's got a lot of like the anti-corpo stuff. Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'm referring to the movie version, but he's like in debt and he signs up to participate in some like reality TV show games. Basically, like, that's like one of the main ways poor people make money is by participating in these games, kind of like a Squid
Squid
Game
Games?
situation.
Yeah.
And he gets signed up to participate in this game where if you manage to survive with the entire world hunting you for so many days, you basically become like unbelievably wealthy, like that you win the prize. And like he's being hunted specifically by like a particular group of people that it's like their job to hunt these people down, but like the whole world knows your face and what you look like and is trying to like report you, because if they report, they give like information that leads to your capture, the TV show awards that person. So like the whole world is
shit.
after you.
Is like out to get you.
Yeah,
Man.
yeah, and it's awesome. He ends. I don't really want to spoil a whole lot, but
Yeah.
there's that. There's also that one anime where the dude has a gun for a face. That's pretty sick.
Oh yeah, that's right. I'm pretty sure guns in the title too. I'm gonna look this up now.
I think it's called No Guns Life.
That sounds right.
Yeah, he just has a
No
he
Guns Life,
He just has a
yes.
face gun.
Oh, I never finished that. It looks. Did you like that anime, Dalton?
Huh? I thought it was.
Uh-oh.
I thought it was very silly. My favorite part is that to help his drugs for his cybernetic implants, which include his gun face, the drug has to be delivered by smoking special cigarettes.
How does one smoke cigarettes when you have a gun for a face?
He has a mouth.
He kind of has a mouth where the trigger is.
Okay. Does the smoke come back through the barrel of the gun?
No, not really.
That was
It's
That
also
was
the
an
gun is a
oversight.
revolver.
Yeah.
So like where his like the core of his brain is, there's a whole revolver, and then like a barrel comes out of his head. It's stupid.
Does he have eyes?
No.
No.
BRB pulling up my anime list. What's this called?
No Guns Life.
I'm adding
3
this to
words.
my list.
Oh.
But there's like countless influential, very cool cyberpunk stuff out there. Christian, I think
Yeah.
you still need to give your favorite cyberpunk thing.
Yeah, so my first exposure to the genre, was definitely original Blade Runner. One of my favorite quotes, I guess. It's more of a speech or what's it called? I'm blanking, but that the character at the end of Blade Runner I'm just failing this movie entirely because I can't even remember
The
his
Tears and
name.
Rain monologue.
Yes, Tears and Rain monologue. That's one of my favorite quotes of any film. I think it's really well done. It's a really cool story how he kind of came up with that monologue and like the night before that was shot. And it fit really, really well. And I thought it was really cool. I've always loved the idea, and you kind of see this with the character I'm making, but the idea of the Talos principle kind of goes over this, and just like and the reason why I kind of my handle is Talos is I always thought it was a cool idea of like the idea of if machine is built by man, is machine man, and how much of it is man. So I always loved that exploration in sci-fi, and specifically cyberpunk, when you're becoming less human as they've altered themselves, and sort of those things, and kind of thinking about like how far should technology go, and what does our future look like there. It's always been super cool to me. So of course, Matrix, I think, like not totally a cyberpunk, but definitely like has inspirations from those things. Was another thing that I really
Keanu Reeves.
loved. So
Keanu Reeves counts as cyberpunk.
Yeah, it's
Just in general.
It works.
Matrix.
It does. But I always thought like it was just like it was so cool. You'd be such a badass within this net system or whatever.
I think it, I
you
definitely think it counts.
I think it counts.
Yeah,
He downloads
it's
karate lessons to his brain. Like that counts more than Terminator counts.
I know kung fu.
But yeah, definitely a bit more focused on like, the spoilers, the actual real world's basically just a bunch of, a simulation being run by a bunch of humans and whatnot. But
Also, they did that cool orgy party in the cave.
That was the thing, yes. Yeah, so I a lot of stuff, and then of course the newest Blade Runner, it was just amazing, so fantastic. So and the game too is pretty amazing. So I'm really excited to see how this compares.
I changed my answer to Code Lyoko.
Yes.
Yes. Good one. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh man.
It's French, but it counts.
Can French not be cyberpunk?
French doesn't mean it wouldn't count.
Of course that means it wouldn't count. The cyberpunk world is about always fighting, never surrendering, and the French get automatically disqualified. So, but I'm willing to overlook it in this case of Code Lyoko.
Oh man.
Rendering a gavel here. I'm slamming the gavel.
Oh man.
I think that's all of our favorite stuff.
Yes. So, if you're getting into Cyberpunk Red specifically, one of the things they stress about playing this game is that style and setting the scene are super important for playing Cyberpunk. That's why I'm wearing my dope ass shades and my fly looking jacket, and I got face paint on me because they really encourage that, like, when you set up for a Cyberpunk game, you really make everybody feel like you're in Cyberpunk. I was actually going to suggest that, like, it's very important to, like, maybe put on some good music. The Cyberpunk 2077 game has a really good, of course, soundtrack. I really like listening to the Cyberpunk Edge Runners, the anime soundtrack. It uses the same songs, but like
you to come and clear the cover.
So, if you guys want, I definitely recommend like putting some music on in the background and just putting it like at like a lower volume and just like while we're like getting things set up and while we're playing, it helps fit the vibe and the mood for it. So, I definitely recommend the when you're reading the game, it highly recommends that like setting the scene is super important for Cyberpunk. So, um, with that being said, and with some music, and hopefully with some music being played now in the background, I'm going to talk a little bit about like the history of like Cyberpunk, the tabletop RPG, and then I'll talk a little bit about the history inside of the game, and then we're going to roll into creating our characters. And that's what we're going to do for session 0 is just create our characters, go over the rules. They have some really nice flowcharts. I freaking fucking love flowcharts.
Everybody knows flowcharts are super punk.
Super fucking punk. So yeah. So Cyberpunk. It originally started as a tabletop RPG in 1998, and it was called Cyberpunk 2013. That because it was in the distant year of 2013, and it came out in 1998. And basically it started out. That's where Cyberpunk's history like starts. So in game, you can think of Cyberpunk as an alternate history. Starting from 1998, our history and that history branches. So everything up to 1998 is pretty much the same. There's, different characters born at different times that exist in the Cyberpunk universe, of course, that don't exist in our world. But that's where things kind of branch off and think of everything in the Cyberpunk tabletop RPG universe as different from there.
Which is very funny because that means like people read Neuromancer and they were like, yeah, that sounds sick. Let's do that.
Do that. But yeah, so the first edition of Cyberpunk came out in 1988. It was Cyberpunk 2013. 2 years later. Yes, Ash?
88 or 98? You've said both.
Sorry, 88. I didn't mean to say 98.
You said 98 earlier.
Oh,
You
I'm
definitely
sorry.
said 98.
It was the 80s. It was
Honestly,
88.
I heard you say 98 more times than say 88.
Mm-hmm.
Damn it. I'm sorry. Cyberpunk 2013.
Chin.
I think Nice City's in Seattle. I think, I'm saying 98. I'm messing up everything here. So Cyberpunk 2013, the first edition of Cyberpunk came out in 1988, and that's where the history diverges. Basically, it's an alternate future where corporations have taken over, and now tech can be implanted into your body. That's like one of the core things that like that edition kind of like takes off from there. 2 years later in our world, in 1990, I want to make sure I say that correctly, 1990, we got Cyberpunk 2020. That was the next edition of Cyberpunk that came out, and probably the most famous up to this point. I would argue that Cyberpunk 2020 is probably still more famous than Red, unless I'm out of the loop and Red's catching on more. But it feels like how Cyberpunk 2020 kind of feels like 3.5 of D&D. I hope that's I think that's an accurate kind of like comparison. But it's crunchy. It's a little bit old school. There's a lot of options you can play with it. A lot of old schoolers play Cyberpunk 2020. We'll get into more details about how it's different later on, but that's what a lot of people feel. And there was another version of Cyberpunk that came out in between now and then. It didn't really seem like much people really play it, so I didn't do too much research into it. For the most part, between 1990 and 2020, our time 2020 is when Cyberpunk Red came out, and that's the newest edition of Cyberpunk that's came out so far. To me, reading through Cyberpunk Red, which is kind of funny because it came out in 2020, and the last edition was Cyberpunk in the distant future of Cyberpunk 2020. But it feels like Cyberpunk Red is kind of like the answer to 5th edition D&D. Much like how 5th edition kind of like streamlined a few things and made things simpler and easier to kind of hop in from like 3.5 edition of D&D, Cyberpunk Red does something similar, where it's more streamlined, it flows, it's not as like crunch. It is crunchy, but it's not as like it's not as complex as Cyberpunk 2020 is. But I hope that don't get the wrong impression that this isn't a complex game. I would say this has the same complexity as 5th edition of Dungeons and Dragons, and we'll get into that as we kind of like go through the rules and everything like that. But reading through it, I really like Cyberpunk Red. It's pretty cool. It was also Cyberpunk Red was also kind of like an update for Cyberpunk 2077, the video game, because they came out same year. Um, anyways, so in Cyberpunk Red, this takes place in 2045. So like 25 years after the Cyberpunk 2020 game. And still a lot, like much before the Cyberpunk 2077 game. So it's in this kind of like in between period between 2020 and 2077, the game. It takes place in 2045. Basically, Christian alluded to this earlier. There was what's called a fourth corporate war. A lot of like the history of Cyberpunk is like governments and countries don't fight each other. It's corporations. Like there's espionage. They like corporations can have their own like military groups essentially, are like small standing armies that they go and they fight people. And usually it's behind the scenes, but sometimes it erupts into a full on war. And that's what happened. There was what's called the Fourth Corporate War, and in 2021 it culminated in a pocket nuke going off in the upper floors of the Arasaka Towers in Night City. And that's what Christian was alluding to earlier. It's not a spoiler. It's like Cyberpunk Red lays that out and is like, hey, here's what happened. What isn't known is who set off the nuke. Nobody knows who set it off. Some people rumored that Arasaka did it themselves. Arasaka obviously claims it was the other corporations trying to get them down. But that's what happened.
I heard it was Guy Fawkes.
Yeah, there we go. That's who it was. Remember. But basically, yes, Ashley?
Hi. For a pocket nuke, like,
Yeah.
what's the fallout on that? Like, is it just like the towers that are affected, or is it like the whole Night City? Is it like multiple state, like miles? Like, what's the?
Imagine
how big is a pocket nuke?
Imagine it taking out like a good section of downtown. Like most of us are from Columbus, Ohio. It took out the short north essentially. It was what's up?
Another seminal cyberpunk work, Ready Player One.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. But like
high quality.
It didn't destroy too much of the city because it was like on the upper floors, so like the explosion was more like up in the air. But like you said, the fallout, like there's still a section of the city in 2045 where you can't really go there or you'll be exposed to radiation. Like it's still like a hot zone is what they call it, and it's kind of in downtown Night City. But there's still a huge chunk of the city that's still fine. It's just imagine like a smaller portion of the city just kind of got nuked. And when that happened, like everybody just called quits. Everybody was like, "Nope, okay, too much. We're done. This is the end of the Fourth Corporate War." But the thing is, like you said, there's still fallout from that. Specifically, now the sky glows red from the atmospheric particles left in the sky, and that's what gave this era, the name of the Time of the Red. And that's where Cyberpunk Red came from. So that was in 2021. That was 14 years ago, or sorry, 24 years ago. It's 2045 now. It's still like you still got the red from all the particles in the air and stuff like that. But yeah, so that's where we are in Cyberpunk Red. That's kind of like the basis, the start of this game. Now we're gonna roll into the flowcharts and making our characters.
I got one question. If you know, the Cyberpunk Edgerunners anime, does that take place like right before 2077?
Like 4 years prior, I think.
Okay.
It was like right around then. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm pretty sure it was around 2077.
Yeah.
You know, same kind of
Oh shit! I guess it's set 2076, just a year before the game.
So like right before the game starts, the stuff in the game.
Yeah. I thought it was like 3 or 4, but I guess it was just maybe at the beginning of the anime it's like 3
Yeah.
or 4 years, but yeah.
I know a lot
So,
of like Cyberpunk is like things are pretty stagnant for the most
Mhm.
part. Has there been like much? Is there much different about how the game presents Night City, like 2077, and how Cyberpunk Red presents Night City?
No, they're pretty similar, it seems like to me. I haven't played too much of like 2077 and stuff like that, but like for most of the visuals and everything I've seen, everything looks pretty similar. So, because you still got AVs, you have the coolest part is like when I was reading, the main difference for like healing and health is how they explain it in game is that like from 2020 to like 2045, there's been huge advancements in like the medical field where you can just like grow limbs and like any injury can be taken care of, which is like their in-game way of saying go to the hospital, they'll fix you up. Like it just you're good.
Yeah, it's
If you
If
go
you
to
have
the
enough
hospital, you're
money.
healed.
GTA rules. You
Yeah.
If you've got trauma team like gold or platinum, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
you have
Which
to have
funny- Which they only have like silver and like executive in this game, which I think is interesting. But yeah, so. But anyways, okay. Everybody, if you can open the core rulebook to page 41, we're gonna be I'll start talking about these flowcharts and stuff like that. To everybody at home, we are going to be making characters. So I have here the Cyberpunk Jumpstarts kit. We are going to be doing adventures. We're going to be doing adventures from that, but that's going to be starting next week. Today, we are just going to be creating our own characters. And into the Jumpstart kit, it does a really good job at getting you ready for playing Cyberpunk, a very kind of like condensed version of it. But it only comes with pre-generated characters. If you want to create your own character, get a hold of the Cyberpunk Red core rulebook, because like let me tell you, it's not hard to make a character. The game does a really good job at like guiding you through step by step on how to make a character. And I'm gonna take these off because I need to read stuff. Oh, but I do really like these glasses. Look, they flash and they
Nice.
blink.
That's very, very cool.
Anyways,
Clearly,
okay.
you're not committed enough to style.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's shutter shade, so like it impairs my vision. Anyways, so in Cyberpunk Red, in the core rulebook, on page 41 and 42, there are easy to follow flowcharts. And this is what we're going to use as kind of like our outline, our guiding point for making a character. And let me tell you, this makes things really easy to make a character. What this is that there are 3 ways to make a character in Cyberpunk Red. There is what's called Street Rat, which is the basic that is like almost like getting a pre-generated character. There is Edge Runner, which gives you a little bit more variety and choice when picking stuff, with some semblance of guidance. And then there's the Complete Package, which Complete Package is like what you would think about like what a full character creation would be. It's point buy, you buy your own weapons and clothes and all that kind of good stuff. You basically buy everything, which is cool. But if you guys look at page 41, this is the first flow chart. It's going to be showing you how to make a character with a Street Red or Edge Runner character. So number 1 is you pick your role, which is kind of like character class in other tabletop RPGs. Then you're going to run your life path. A life path is kind of like your character like backstory. So it's going to be telling you about whether or not you had family members, whether or not you had a job before and you failed out. You're going to be doing it's going to be cool because it's going to choose an adversary for you, which could be like an ex-lover that you scorned. It's really fun. It's all roleplay stuff, but like it's really fun to go through. After we do our life path, we're going to be going through statistics. We're going to be doing stats. Then we're going to calculate what's called derived statistics. That sounds super complicated, but it's just like health and stuff like that. It's just like figuring out your health.
No, we have to go back, learn. When do you learn derivatives in math? What level of math is that?
Yeah.
Is that
Calculus?
is that calculus or pre-calc?
Yeah.
No, that's calc.
I
That's
think
calculus.
that's calc.
Calc.
Somewhere around there.
When do we learn? When do
Oh.
we have to do the integral stats?
Integral. There's no integral stats here.
Integrals are definitely calc.
Oh,
Integrals
man.
is calculus for sure.
Oh man. So next up after derived stats, we do skills, which like stats are very similar to stats in like D&D and Call of Cthulhu. It's like your main like core stats that stay with you. Where skills, this is going to be very similar to Call of Cthulhu. This is a skill-based like D&D, or this is a skill-based tabletop game. So investing into different skills is really going to help you interact and do stuff better in the world. And there's a lot of skills to choose from. It's okay because like I'll go over skills more in detail when we get there, but you don't have to choose every skill. Just pick stuff that you like. After skills, we're going to do weapons and armor. Then we're going to pick our outfit. And lastly, we're going to go over cyberware, which I was super intimidated at first, but like I would compare it. It's like the same complexity as learning magic and spells in like a D&D. There's definitely some like stuff you have to go through it, but once you kind of understand, it makes sense. It's a little bit like building a computer.
I think it also gives you like if you pick a role, it gives you like a list of like here's our recommended like weapons, gear, armor, and cyberware. If you don't want to have to like read all the things and pick it, it's just like here's a good starting point. You can buy more later if you don't die.
Which I'm glad you brought up, because what I was going to say is that, like, when I was reading through this, you can definitely mix and match the different ways you build a character as you go through it. Like, for example, if you go to statistics and you're like, I want to point by my statistics, and then that's complete package. You can do that. But then if you get to like you were saying, Dalton, you get to like your gear, your cyberware, and you're like, I don't know what I want. You don't have to do the complete package. You can back up and do the edge runner, and then just take what they recommend. It makes perfect sense. It divides into these different sections. The only way you can't do that is like, for example, in the complete package on the flowchart on page 42, you'll see that like when you're buying weapons, armor, gear, fashion, cyberware, they give you a set amount to do that. So you can't like take the set stuff in like one in the edge runners and then like buy like your clothes. Like it kind of like all fits that together. You might be able to do it. I didn't calculate it out myself, but I would recommend that like for that section you stick to it. But if you want to do like stats like complete style and like then like buy your stuff or set your skills in like another style, you can do that. That's possible. So
the one quick thing I wanted to mention is when I was reading through the Jumpstart guide, it did mention that for new players, I believe new to TTRPGs in general, they don't recommend using the complete package because of how complicated it is.
Yes.
So that's just something to consider if you're a GM. Just take into account your specific players. You know, if someone has never touched a die outside of Yahtzee, maybe guide them more towards Street Rat or Edge Runner.
Mm-hmm.
Shotgun Die Outside of Yahtzee is my first album.
Getting a lot of good album names today.
Sorry, my brain is just wired to catch stupid band names. The group chat has killed me.
Oh man.
Like I have dedicated neural pathways.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so if everybody's got that, make sure you'll also have a character sheet in front of you. Then we're gonna go ahead and start going over roles on page 29. So, in the Jumpstart rulebook, there's only a set number of the roles that you can do, which, like I said, are just like your character classes. but there are a few extra ones in the Cyberpunk in the core rulebook. Sorry, I was trying to get to like the specific rules. In Cyberpunk, the core rulebook. Sorry, I was trying to get the right page. Anyways, I'll just go over the rules. We have Rocker Boys, which are kind of like rock and roll rebels that use performance, art, and rhetoric to fight authority. You can think of them kind of like a good way to think of them are kind of like bards, but they're a little bit like they're more so. You'll see in not in the jumpstart, but in the core rulebook, every role has like a specific ability that they get. And Rocker Boys, they get a lot of their stats they recommend is like doing performance and acting and stuff like that. But like their like core ability when you get to them is like when you meet a fan, asking them to do favors for you. So they even say like Rocker Boys can like fitting into the Cyberpunk universe. Like obviously you can have a band, you can be a rock star, but like anything that's kind of cultish also fit the role of Rocker Boy. Like they use the terminology as like a cult, very very similar to like what Rocker Boys do and what their core ability kind of does. So Rocker Boys are about like performance, acting, and then using their fans to do favors for them. Next up, we have solos, which are kind of like the fighters of the Cyberpunk universe. They are bodyguards, they're assassins, they're killers. Their whole thing is like their role ability is about like combat awareness, which is like just having extra points to like buff up your skills. And then before any combat or at any time, you can just redistribute those skills to be better at some things than others, which is really neat because basically if you're like, oh, I want to be better at like, shooting this gun today, like you can just change your point allocation to do that as a solo, which is super cool. Next up, we have net runners. This is like very similar to what we were talking about with like the Matrix, like jacking in, going into the net, Ready Player One. Like this is what net runners do. Net running has changed a lot from 2020 to Red. The internet has changed a lot. We can go more into this when we go over net running rules, but think of the net. There's no like worldwide internet anymore, like what we currently have. It's more like city-based, and hacking into a location requires you to be physically at the location. Think of it as every building has their own internal internet, and you have to be at that location to hack into it.
Have you ever watched or played the Mega Man Netrunner games? It's very specific, but it's like that a lot. You have to like specifically jack in. Everybody has their little handheld thing, and it's got an Ethernet cord, like a retractable Ethernet cord that you have to plug in.
That's really similar to how Cyberpunk Red does it. That's cool. But yeah, so like they hack into systems and control basically all the circuitry that's connected to the city to the building internet. So techs, they are like, yes, Ashley.
I have a quick lore question. What when it says of the post-net world, are you able to give like a 3-sentence description of what happened to the net?
Yeah, a really famous coder named Barch Moss. Yes,
Bart
there
Moss.
it is. Yes.
What's his first name? I'll look it up.
Raish or
Bart
like
Moss.
that.
Yeah. But basically he left a bunch of like messed up viruses in it that like kills people because it you could die in the net, and if you die in the net, you die in real life. If you died in the net before, you would die. But basically, yeah, the old net got flooded with a bunch of like bad viruses that just kill you on sight. So,
but it was a bunch of like rogue AI stuff too. That's I think part of why AI is like
outlawed.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not smart AI anymore. It's only dumb AI, essentially. Yeah. So, but yeah, did that answer your question, Ash? It wasn't 3 words.
Why did the hacker guy decide to release a bunch of nasty viruses in the net?
He died.
And
he went out with a bang.
Yeah.
Okay. That tracks, I guess. He's like, if I can't have it, no one can.
To be honest, there's a lot of stuff that they leave kind of like in the lore, like up to interpretation or like unknown, and that's one of them. They kind of leave loose ends and story hooks, I think, for game masters to kind of like explore more. But I mean, Dan, you can correct me if I'm wrong if they explain it more in 2077.
They
But
do. I was about to say they actually. So if you play as like a net runner, I mean it's open for everyone, but for like people specifically interested in like net running, there's like a quest that kind of explains, and I don't even remember if I found it through a quest or if I was like literally just like looking around, because it's not really a quest, but so much is more of like a hidden like collectible so much. But it's like on the map, but it's not. I don't remember exactly how you find it, but yeah, like you can find the info, and I'm not going to give away more than that. But you can find some very interesting things. Let's put it that way. So
that's cool.
yeah.
Yeah. So Tex is the next role. Think of them kind of like mechanics, like their whole ability is like repairing stuff, but like also like inventing new stuff or just making stuff, which is really cool. That's like their whole thing is that's what techs do. If you think of netrunners as kind of like the internet, like computer science engineers, techs are like the electrical engineers type deal. The coolest thing is like as I was reading through the tech's like role ability, like they can invent stuff, and like one of the coolest parts, and we'll get more into that when we go into each specific ability more in detail, but like it specifically says like, hey, techs can make stuff, and it addresses to the player that like, hey, whatever you make, your GM may approve it at first or may like work with you to balance it, but then like when you play it out, the GM may come back to you and balance it even more as you keep playing, because inventing stuff is kind of broken. And so I really like the fact that Cyberpunk Red specifically is like, hey, this is a really powerful ability. Your GM's gonna work with you. It may not be perfect on the first try, and it may be adjusted in the future, so be warned. Which I think is really cool that it preps players for that, so you don't go in with an expectation of like, well, I made this, it should always work. Like it's an evolving thing, which I think is really cool. So, next up we have medtechs, which are basically the healers of the Cyberpunk Red universe. It really describes them as kind of like both be kind of a tech person, but also healing, because they don't really fix cyberware, but they can like implant it and stuff like that. From my understanding, in Cyberpunk 2020, medtechs were like a mix between like a tech and a medical professional. This is a little bit more medical, like for humans rather than like a thing. But they do a lot of stuff of like implementing cyber tech through surgery, reattaching limbs, healing people. That's like what their ability does. Oh, including they can also make drugs, which is always fun. So, not narcotics, not street drugs, but pharmaceutical drugs. So, super nice. Next up, medias, which is not in the Jumpstart kit. This is like news reporters, media stars, social influencers. The thing that I like about this role is that when you think of medias, you often think of like a news person going to a scene and being like, this is ABC's news, ready to take on this news story. But it specifically does say it for the media role. You can be like a YouTube influencer. You can be like a social media star or something like that. So it's not limited to that. It's like having a following. So I would argue this role can kind of mix with Rocker Boys a little bit. What differentiates them is like your ability. So Rocker Boys, they have fans that they can call upon like favors to do. Media's, their whole ability is about like exposing corporations and stuff and like undermining them. So it's all about like making sure like your story, and this is factored into it, making sure you have like evidence to prove, having certain pieces of evidence, and then also having you believability in the story, which is calculated in the game. And like if you pull that off, you can make fundamental changes, like exposing corporations and stuff like that, and getting people shut down, which is pretty crazy. So think of Rocker Boys as like small time, like instantly, like, hey, fan, come do this thing for me. Where media is about like exposing fundamental structures or like stuff and convincing people, hey, this is a fundamental problem and we shouldn't use this company anymore. So, pretty cool. I think that's a pretty cool role. Execs, also a role that's not in the Jumpstart kit. This is you play as the baddie essentially. Corporations are not good in the Cyberpunk universe. They fuck you over, to put it politely.
They're not good in this universe. I don't.
So basically, as an exec, it's interesting because this role is about like you're basically a slave to your corporation. Sure, you get like a nice home. You get like your whole role ability is getting like minions essentially to like do your bidding. But like you're a slave to them. You have to do what they tell you. So it's a very interesting role. Probably the most complicated to play in the game. But when I was reading it, I was fully on board because, like I said, you get team members that you manage, little NPCs that follow you around and stuff like that. But you have to balance like their loyalty to you, because if you don't do certain things or if you like abandon them in combat, they will betray you, and I think that's awesome. Like I said, kind of complicated. The GM has to take control of like your team members, and it's a lot more NPCs on the board. So definitely like the most complex role in my opinion in the game, but super interesting. Next up, you have lawmen, which are basically you're part of the police. I think of this role as like I mentioned RoboCop earlier, but I think a closer representation is maybe like Judge Dredd. That's what it kind of feels like for this role. You're a bodyguard, and like your whole role ability is about calling in backup and calling your squad to like have them come in and back you up, which is super cool. Fixers, those guys are going to be the ones getting the deals. So like in the Cyberpunk universe, when we're playing each session in each game, you can think about each session as like your fixer coming to the team, coming to you guys, excuse me, and being like, hey guys, I got a job for us. That's kind of like what fixers do. They're the ones going to people, talking, getting things set up, and getting the jobs done. They're the ones who make the arrangements. They know the neighborhood. They make the arrangements, and they get jobs in. Their whole ability, though, on top of that, is like setting up night markets. So, like, if you need like illegal streetwear or cyberware or something like that, their whole thing is about organizing markets and getting discounts on those deals, which is pretty cool. And then lastly, nomads. They're the vehicle people. They nomads in the Cyberpunk universe are kind of like if you need something transported city to city or getting something transported to you, you usually go through nomads. They're big giant caravans. They're kind of like, imagine like shipping trucks had like their whole family traveling with them in different vehicles. That's kind of like what they do. Nomad as a whole thing, you just know basically every vehicle innately, and you get vehicles from your family pool that you can have access to, which is pretty cool. But yeah, those are the role abilities. I know I dragged on there for a little bit. I got really excited. I like the roles a lot in this game. They feel very unique to me. They feel very authentic, and each of them with their role ability feel very distinct. Where in Call of Cthulhu, you had an occupation, sure, but that was mostly roleplay, and your skills kind of did stuff. In Cyberpunk, you have that, but also you get a core class ability, which is pretty cool. Does anybody have any questions or want to talk about what roles sound interesting to them?
I want to play the med tech. That sounds super interesting to me. And I've read ahead about their role ability, and I think it's cool.
Good.
I mean, I didn't really have a whole lot of preference going in. I was just gonna go with whatever, and like what seemed like interesting in the context that like we're running like two kind of shorter missions. We want to make sure like stuff shows up, and so like actually like kind of usable. So I was probably going to do Rocker Boy, since that seems to almost be like I was like poster boy, but like it's the first one. They say it seems pretty integral to the vibes.
I mean, that's what Johnny Silverhand is. He's a rocker boy. He's the frontman of his band.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Also, I watched Spider-Man recently, and Hobie Brown is very cool.
I do have a question for you, Spencer. So, looking at the medtech role ability, whenever the medtech increases their medicine rank, they also choose one of the following 3 medicine specialties to allocate 1 point to. So, my question is, as I am, do I start out with one of the 1 point in one of the specialties, or do I start out with no points in any specialties?
Yeah, I was definitely going to get that. So basically, and we can go more into this when we're setting out skills and everything like that. But when you start a new character, your rank for your role ability starts at 4. So that can mean differently for different roles. I can definitely go. I was definitely going to go more into it when we get to roles and everything. You start out at rank 4 for your role ability, and some abilities are a little bit complicated in the sense of like rank 4 can mean like you upgrade certain skills in different areas. You can divide those points in different things. It really varies between classes. And that's why it feels so unique, is that like definitely when you're picking a class and starting out, pick a role that sounds interesting to you and just focus on just that role, because role abilities are super interesting but can be a little bit complex, especially as we get more into it. That's probably why they didn't include it in the Jumpstart kit, is because of the complexity of it.
Also, the Jumpstart kit is just to be a single mission. Like your character comes in, there's no point in explaining how to improve or change your character because it won't happen.
Yeah. So yeah, Ash, when you're picking out those med tech abilities, your rank starts at 4. You can actually multi-class into other classes, and when you do that, we'll get to that when we're doing improvement and stuff like that. But basically, whenever you move into another class, you start at rank 1. So that's why there are ranks lower than 4. So, Dan, Christian, what are you guys thinking for your roles?
Yeah, I was thinking doing a solo.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like kind of like a merc style, just beat them up.
Yeah. Everybody needs a solo. They're really, I mean, like when we get into combat, like gunplay and stuff like that, super fun. So it's going to be great once we get to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Christian, I think you mentioned before you already had a character kind of.
Yeah, well, we definitely wanted to cover net running. So I jumped on board pretty quickly with that. I think that sounded super fun. And I'm gonna be a hacker man. So
Hacker man, yes. All right. Okay, so next up on the flow chart, if you guys are looking at your flow charts on page 41, we're going to do our life paths next. So like I said, this is all going to be like really roleplay heavy, but I think this is going to be a lot of fun to do. So if you have a character sheet on page 2, so your first page is going to be your skills, your handle, role ability, all that stuff. On page 2, that's where you have all your life path stuff. So as we're kind of going through and writing and getting all this done, this is where you're going to write your life path stuff down. And one thing I want to note, because life path starts on page 43. One thing I want to note as we're going into this, it's going to have you roll on tables. But it specifically says if you just want to pick something, you can just pick something and do that. If you want to make something up, you definitely can do that too. I think of this as just a fun, cool, randomized way to kind of like build your character's backstory and build it up. And I think the suggestions they give are really cool. We cover this in D&D and stuff like that too, where they talk about personality traits and flaws and all of that. That's all background stuff. Same thing here, is that like it's really open for what you want to do. But I highly recommend just trying to roll on the table. And if you don't like what you rolled, then just roll again or pick something else. So as you're kind of going through and doing this, that's what I kind of recommend to do. But the first thing you should come across for your life path is on page 45, and you have your cultural origins. So this is kind of cool to show. In the Jumpstart kit, I got some D10s from the Jumpstart kit, and they're all cool and red and stuff like that. But basically, you can just take a D10, you roll it. I got a 4. And basically, what your cultural origins is that 4, it shows that I'm from Eastern Europe. And then I can choose the languages that I might know. So it could be English, Finnish, Polish, Romanian, Russian, or Ukrainian. So basically, if you look on your first sheet, under educational skills, and we'll get more to not educational skills. Where is that?
It is. Educational
it is?
skills, language.
Oh, language, yeah. So if you look under educational skills, that's where your language is. We're going to go more detail into skills when we get to it, but basically for street slang, that's already filled in because you can think of this as like common in D&D. That's the language everybody knows. Go ahead and write a 4 for the level there, because that's how good you are in that language skill.
For the one we're grabbing from this table?
No, for street slang.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Where's that?
Sorry, yes. The language, sorry, everybody knows street slang. The language that you're picking from this table, yes, that is what you start with 4 points. So
And
basically,
where does that go on my sheet?
So if you look on your first character sheet where all the skills are,
Yes.
in the middle column under educational skills,
Yes. Excellent.
language, underneath street slang, go ahead and write that language. Like I'm Eastern European, I'm Eastern European, and I'm gonna choose like Romanian as my language. I write down Romanian and I put a 4 there because those are 4 free points in my native language.
And is that under level, stat, or base?
Level.
And
I can
we don't put anything in the boxes for street slang right now?
No, we'll just leave that as is. We assume everybody knows street slang, so you're good.
Yeah, I think like we're level 4 in this other language because like we might have to roll about it and like might not know certain terms, but it's assumed that we're fluent in street slang and we'll never have to like roll in relation to that ability.
Yeah. Exactly. Next page we have personality. So this once again it's a D10 roll you can do. But if you just want to pick a certain personality type, you can do that. I'm just gonna roll a D10. I got a 6, which means I'm stable and serious. Personality is on page 2. If you're looking at the life path section on the left side of the sheet, it's the second column at the very top. So, I forgot to show. Sorry, I forgot to share these flowcharts with you guys. I have the flowcharts for easy to see, in here, in Roll20. Sorry, in Roll20.
I don't know how a rocker boy is going to be picky, fussy, and nervous, but I'll make it work.
It could be like that's your personality outside of the stage. Like
Maybe.
you act your persona, and then outside of the stage, you're like, why is there no green M&Ms in here?
I only eat the green ones. All the other ones die gives me tummy problems.
On the next page, we have dress and personal style. So once again, this is just a D10. I'm gonna roll. I got an 8. Gang colors. So I wear gang colors. I should actually be filling this out. Oh. Gang colors. characters. Perfect. Yeah. So, what was everybody else's personality, by the way? Did anybody else pick something? Are you rolling for stuff?
I'm rolling everything.
Nice.
And I got Pacific Islander, who is intellectual and detached, who wears bohemian clothes.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I don't know. I kind of like. So with like the solo, I have like this like vision of like kind of like a Rick Deckard, like kind of, you know,
Yeah.
kind of like the oh my god, what are the enforcers from Fallout 4? Like the synth enforcers called?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Like just like this like I want him to wear a duster. I want him to wear a duster. You know,
Dusters
he's
are
gonna wear a
pretty
leather
sick.
duster. That's what's happening.
Underneath clothing, it's an affection you are never without. I rolled a 4 and got spiked gloves. So my character's always wearing his spiked gloves.
Spencer, for context, is
Yeah.
is this system pretty much like just D10s, or are there other dice that we care about?
Yeah, so thank you for asking. Basically, the most you'll ever roll is like 1d10. There's never really a situation where you'll roll 2 unless you score critical. So it's mostly d10s. That's going to be like the d20 of this system. But for damage, it's all based on d6s. So it's a d10 and a d6s system only. That's what we're going to be using for this game.
Okay.
So the Jumpstart contains 2 d10s and 4 d6s. So that's the most that you're going to do. And a cool thing, a couple of us recently went to Gen Con, and they were handing out Danger Girl dice. So I got 2d6s of Danger Girl, if it shows up.
Is this like affectation you're never without? Is that like in most valued possession, or is that?
That's where I put mine. I didn't realize that there wasn't gonna be a section. I think it is what do you value most, but I also put it in my clothing style because I got spiked gloves. But
Mhm.
There's also like a
Separate what do you
fashion.
value most table though.
There is a table for that.
It's on the next page.
So I put mine in the right hand side. There's a column. There's a box for fashion,
Yeah.
and I just put my
That makes
affectation
sense.
there. I don't even know like what bohemian really is. Like
is that like what
That's like
Shaggy wears?
That's
Yeah.
like hippy dippy clothes,
oh,
I think.
nice, that works. Okay.
Yeah, I imagine. Well, yeah, I was gonna say
okay.
like a.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
very much hippy dippy
Yeah.
clothes.
Folksy,
Yes.
retro, free spirited. That all screams like 60s hippie. to me.
Yes, for sure. Let's see here. After that affection, you have motivations and relationships. So, this is where what do you value most is. So yeah, I think Dan was more writing like the affection in under fashion or in clothing style, because this is I got a 9 for what do I value most, and I value family most.
I value knowledge.
What do I value?
And then, how do you feel about most people? So there is a column that says, what do you value most? Which mine is family. And then says, how do you feel about most people? And mine is, wipe them all out and let the cockroaches take over.
Except for family.
Except for my family. Oh. Then it's like things you value most. Let's see here. 2, I say a brother or sister, which makes sense. For my family.
Most valued person, a teacher or a mentor. Wow. Okay. I just have to say, I'm like exclusively rolling. Like I am not like picking these at all.
Yeah.
And I got what do you value most? Like, so take a step back. Personality style, intellectual. What do you value most? Knowledge. I did not choose that. It rolled that. And then it was like, person you value the most, a teacher or a mentor.
Yeah.
It's just like it's coming together too much, you know?
That's what
Dice, no.
that's why I really like how they did this life path and a lot of the flowcharts and stuff like that. Because I think they did a really good job on this, especially for building life paths. By the way, this like what do you value most? Feelings about people, most valued person, and most valued position are all there's little boxes for each of these. So my most valued possession, I got a weapon. That was cool.
Excuse me.
I got a letter.
Ooh. Okay. So we did motivations, relationships. We did what do you value most? How do you feel about people? Things you value, so most valued person and most valued possession. Now we're doing your original family background. So once again, you can choose one of these or you can just roll it. I rolled a 1, which means my family was corporate execs. Wealthy, powerful, with servants, luxury homes, the best of everything, private security, made sure you were always safe. You definitely went to a big name private school. And then I messed that up somehow. So it's interesting they say like you went to like a big name private school because like in Cyberpunk Edge Runners, that's what David starts out as too. He's like going to like a private school and everything, and then stuff happens. But he didn't come from a corporate exec background. So this is definitely something where you can kind of like change it as you kind of go on, but or adjust it to what makes sense for your character. But I still think this is pretty cool.
I was part of a nomad pack.
Ooh, you were ex-nomad. See, that could be cool too, because like if you ever need a vehicle or anything, I bet you still have contacts in your nomad pack, unless you mess things up real good.
Burn the bridge.
Yeah. All right. After original background, you have childhood environment, which for me, I rolled a 9, and I got in a drift nation, floating offshore city that is a meeting place for all kinds of people. That's awesome. It reminds me of like the flotilla in Mass Effect. Perfect. After environment, we're going to do family crisis. So this is probably where things go bad. I rolled a 3. Your family was exiled or otherwise driven from their original home nation corporation. This is interesting. So like I grew up in a drift nation, but they are corporate execs. So I wonder if it was a corporate takeover of a drift nation or something. Or no, they were execs. Then they went to the drift nation to leave the corporation. That's how they got exiled, or they were exiled to go do that. That's cool.
What are the reclaimers? I don't remember hearing anything about 2077 or in Edge Runners.
I think they're out on the outskirts finding old abandoned like towns and stuff to like find a new place to live, right, Spencer?
Yes, correct. So essentially, think of it as like as you go further out from Night City, it's more and more desolate, right? So like Dalton was saying, they're going out and like staking down, reclaiming parts of the outside borders of Night City to be reclaimed and like livable and live there and all that kind of stuff. So that's what they're doing.
Got it.
I got a question for you, GM.
Yeah, what's up?
I'm looking at this, and it just goes from environment and family crisis to friends and enemies. I don't see a life goals table.
There, I see one in
Uh,
mine. Life goals is right beneath childhood environment.
Life goals is on page 53 if you're referring to like the rule book.
I am.
Yeah. So yeah, because like after Family Crisis, that's when you go into your friends and stuff, and there's like 3 sections for friends and 3 sections for tragic love affairs and enemies, and then life goals. That's going to be all at the very last thing we roll on. So does that help out, Ash?
Yes, thank you.
Cool.
Okay,
So
so
friends,
roll 1d10 and subtract 7.
7. Yep.
So does that mean I could have no friends?
Yeah, because I rolled a 4 minus 7. That's 0. So I don't have any friends.
That's actually -3, but you know.
Right. I made 3 enemies. Speaking of which, first roll 1d10, subtract 7 to determine how many enemies you made. Okay, let's see if I made any enemies. Nope, I got a 2. I have negative enemies as well. Everybody just, I'm not even worth it. But if you did make any friends or enemies, the most you could have is 3. That's why there's 3 sections on the sheet for it. And you roll it. There's stuff like, for example, friends. It could be like you could have a friend that's like a younger sibling to you. You could have an old enemy that's your friend now, like a Vegeta in Dragon Ball Z. Enemies, like for example, this is where I thought was really cool. Like enemies, like number 1 is like an ex-friend, and what caused it. You get to choose. So you can choose like deserted or betrayed the other, or one of you was a business rival, or you can roll on the table for that too. Both is good. Like you could roll like a 2 and get your ex-lover. Then you could roll a like 4 and get accuse the other of cowardice or some other major personal flaw. And then what can they throw at you? And I rolled a 5 and I got themselves and a few friends. So I love that how like you can already have like some like enemies starting out and such. So
Why do they get to have an entire gang? So I value friendship the most, but I didn't roll any friends, unfortunately.
I mean you're like a hopeless romantic, but with friends.
Right, but with friends. But I did get an enemy. Apparently, I caused some corporate exec to lose a lover, and they have an entire gang at their disposal to throw at me.
Oh, that's perfect.
So
As you can see, there's another section because at the bottom is the enemies. There's also what's gonna happen. Like what are they or what are you / they gonna do about it? And then 5. So I got like backstab them indirectly. But then below that is your tragic love affairs. So it's also a D10 minus 7. I got an 8, so that means I get 1. And I got a 10, which means my lover was imprisoned or exiled.
Oh wait, we have to do lovers now too. That's right. I had no friends or enemies.
so hopefully
Remember,
you get at least one tragic love affair.
Yeah. Remember, you don't have to roll that. If you want to have some friends or want to have some enemies, you can just choose up to 3.
The dice
we're
was
rolling.
spoken.
We're rolling, baby.
We're rolling. And then after tragic love affairs, we do life goals. So I rolled a d10. I got a 4. Cause pain and suffering to anyone who crosses you. So basically, if you're on my shit list, you're on my shit list.
I have no friends, no enemies, no bitches, no maidens.
No maidens.
Because knowledge is what's most important to you. You don't need
Knowledge
human
is
connection.
power. I have my books.
And I'm sure, like, just because you didn't start with any either doesn't mean, like, over the course of the game they show up and you
Yeah.
fill that stuff out. This is just kind of like getting your base.
Yeah. And that's the general life path from there. If you guys look, the next section, starting at page 53, is going to be your role specific life path. So that's going to be what you guys chose, like Dalton being a rocker boy. Then we go into like the specific rocker boy life path or the specific solo life path. So, for example, I'll go ahead and start talking about that. And by the way, the PDF, if you click on the little like icons on page 53, it just jumps you straight to where your role is, which is really cool. But for Rocker Boy, Dalton, you're going to be rolling first what kind of Rocker Boy you are. Once again, if you just want to choose it, just choose it. Perfectly fine.
Oh,
But
yeah.
if you roll a d10, like if I rolled a d10 and got a 9, it says that you're a DJ Rocker Boy. So, then you go and then you follow like it shows you like there's like little flow charts. Like, are you a group or a solo act? And then you split. If you go to the group, if you go to group, then it's like, where do you perform? Roll a d6 for that, and so on and so forth. Were you once in a group? Like if you're a solo act now, which is really cool because it's like, oh no, I was always solo. Or, oh, if you were in a group, what happened? What's your reason? They have a d6 chart for that too. So basically, these are all like one-page stuff and everything, but it helps if you chose in a role kind of what you do.
Yeah.
This is really cool because in Cyberpunk Red, it sounds like in Cyberpunk 2020, it was closer to Cyberpunk, or sorry, it was closer to like who you actually were, if I'm getting this right. In Cyberpunk Red, this is like a job. Think of your role as like your job and what you do from day to day. So Rocker Boys, they play music day to day. That's like what their job is. Solos, they're a bodyguard. They protect people. They kill people. That's what they do day to day. Net runners, they hack into systems. They commit espionage. Like that's what they do day to day. Medtechs, for example, Ashley, you may be in this crew, but your main job may be on the trauma team. That may be your main income, but you moonlight for this crew or something like that. So it's there's all sorts of different stuff. And as you guys are each rolling your tables and everything, yes, go ahead.
Cyber psychotherapist sounds really cool.
Boom, there it is. You can be a therapist.
I'm looking
But a
at
cyber
some of
psychotherapist.
I'm seeing some terms that I don't fully recognize. I want to make sure I'm getting the right idea of what they are.
Sure.
Referencing the data pool. That's like a local intranet, right? That's just like the citywide.
So essentially, instead of payphones, there are these data pools. So think of it as just kind of like a public access terminal where you can access just like it, kind of like Wikipedia. It's the Wikipedia for the city. Sometimes they'll have scream sheets and stuff like that, but it works very simple. That's why you can't really like hack into the data pool. It's more so like it just picks information. There's no like, oh, I can like upload stuff or anything like that. It's more like newspapers get sent out kind of like a email. Like it's you can reference and find information, but there's not really like you can't hack into it or like upload stuff or have like a website or anything on the data pool or sitting net. It's just like a public access, like, oh, I'm going to go to this terminal real quick, if that makes sense. So, but yeah, as you guys are kind of picking your life paths, in the GM notes on page 390, it actually kind of has this cool little section where it talks about like the crew. So all of you guys, like how you guys stick together, why you're together, could be a bunch of different reasons. You can be anything from like corporate troubleshooters, like a corporation has hired you to go and solve whatever their problems are, to a private investigation firm. Maybe you're going and like figuring out and doing a scoop. That'd be really good if you had a media on your team. You could be a nomad smuggling pack. Sounds like Dan already has some nomad connections. You could be like the nomad team, like kind of like hires you guys to help them deliver stuff. Or because of Ashley's medtech role, you could even be a trauma team. Most people don't think of like an entire crew being a trauma team, but maybe you're there to back up Ashley for like whatever she needs. Like, like if people are on like their medicine plan, you get called to anything. Like people will have like their agent hooked up to a biomonitor, and if your vital signs aren't looking good, the trauma team gets called and automatically charges like the trauma team like plan. So like you guys could be like you're as a trauma team flying out to wherever their client is maybe they're locked behind a door that Christian's character has to net run to go and hack into it and like get the door open, and then you guys have to kill whoever's holding your client hostage. Ton of stuff there, tons of stuff. But after life paths and stuff like that, we can well, why don't we, if you guys are feeling it, why don't we go ahead and take a break now? So that way people can go finish their life paths, finish filling that out stuff, and then that's the end of the life path. We're gonna just pick up and start rolling stats after that. So, if that's all good with everybody else.
Sounds good to me. We can take a break.
Yeah,
Cool!
great.
All right, we'll be right back with more Cyberpunk Red of our Session 0. Stay tuned, and we'll see you in just a short little bit. Welcome back, everybody, to the ABCs of RPGs, where we teach you the basics of tabletop role-playing games. You've joined us in the middle of Session 0 of our Cyberpunk Red campaign. So far, we've started making our characters. We talked a little bit about the cyberpunk genre, went to that kind of stuff. We've picked out roles for everybody, and we just made our life paths. Does everybody want to do a quick summary of the life path they've gotten so far, or do we want to hold till the very end?
Let's do quick summaries.
All right, let's do it.
So I don't know what my handle's gonna be yet, but I rolled for everything. I'm a sub-Saharan African who speaks Arabic. I am friendly and outgoing with a high fashion sense of style. I'm also bald, so that's fun, and I'm really here for it.
Are you bald or shaved?
Well,
it's a distinction
it
to me.
said bald, but I think I'm going to make myself shave.
Okay.
That's sweet.
I value most honor, and I feel that people are untrustworthy. I don't depend on anyone. Therefore, I value myself most. My most valued possession is a weapon to keep myself safe. And I have the ganger family background, which basically means that I had no real family. I was just kind of raised by this very violent gang. You can kind of think of Star-Lord's kind of Ravagers family in Guardians of the Galaxy. We were a nomadic pack with the roots in transport. And this all fits because my family vanished and I'm the only one left. So I'm guessing that's why I got roped into this ganger family, or maybe they abducted me and my family didn't vanish at all. My life goal is to get off the street at all costs, which makes sense given everything else I rolled. I have no friends. I had one tragic love affair and it just didn't work out. I'm guessing it's because I have trust issues.
Uh-huh.
I do have two enemies though. Ironically, one of them is a person I worked for, and one of them is a person who's working for me. The person I worked for tried to romance me, and I thought that was very inappropriate in a work setting. And so I turned him down. And he's going to call the local cops on me, and this makes me so pissed off in humanity that I am going to enter a murderous rage and rip his face off. For the person who's working for me, I betrayed them to save myself. They can throw my boss back at me, a powerful gang lord, and I've decided just to avoid them. I love my tattoos. I'm a cryosystems operator. I work alone, obviously. And my clients are the loco solos or other combat types, so I imagine that Dan's character is going to come to me all the time after he's getting in scuffles on the streets.
Maybe that's how you met.
Maybe that's how we met. Yeah, I started patching him up after he had a bad mission. So yeah, that's Are there like certain like cyberpunky names like for the handles? Is there an inspiration for that, or are they more like normal people names?
Your character definitely has like a normal name, but like for example, like one of the main characters you guys are gonna meet is, since nobody's a fixer, is in the first mission you have a person that is your fixer who sets you up with missions and stuff. And his handle is called Rex. So it's just REX. So it's kind of, think of it kind of like a gamer tag, a online persona, just kind of like it can be something short my gamer tag's like Rocket V03. Like it could be something like that. It could be just like a short 3-letter name. It could be something that's like a gamer tag. It's just whatever you kind of like want to be referred to as. Or even like your rap name, something like that. So yeah. Yeah.
I was flashback to the Sword Art Online Abridged Season 2 bit where he logs in and he's going to name himself Kirito. And he's like, sorry, that name's unavailable. And he's like, all right, Kiri2. Like, nope, unavailable. K1R1TO, unavailable. It's like, and then it's like flash cut to like 3 hours later. And it's like, all right, I think I finally cracked the code. XX underscore Kirito XVX underscore kill me until he hit the max character limit. Very funny bit.
Love that. Oh man.
Anybody else want to go over their life path, or do we want to move on for sake of time so we can introduce ourselves fully later?
Yeah. Let's do like one to two sentences summary real quick for everybody.
So I'm a totally evil assassin for hire. My family was a nomad, and I value intelligence. I don't know. I'll come up with some flavored text. Probably they were like, you deserve better. I don't know. Whatever. Anyway,
Yeah.
I kill people in combat zone, and I enjoy it. I kill people for hire.
Oh man.
You need someone
Perfect.
taken out? I do that. I'm bam, 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 bam.
Perfect. Christian?
My character is a East Asian Japanese corporate clone runner. Acts for the man. I may have a secret partner who may be a rogue AI, maybe. You know. And yeah, there is obviously more to my past and my motivations than meets the eyes.
Nice. Perfect.
Nice.
Dalton?
My role is rocker boy. So very like charismatic, has a cult personality around them. But as I was rolling, I was getting things like wearing leisure wear, so like fully like gray sweats. I have like long and ratty hair. I value friendship, but I don't have any friends. So all of this was screaming like online neat type person. And when I was rolling on my like rocker boy tab itself, I got idol as my like job, like my type of performance. And so like that, I'm a VTuber. That's what I am. So I have like my fake online persona that isn't like actually my face. It's like mocapped, like either like art.
Yeah.
And then when you
Because you don't need to do your hair. It's already
right,
made
I don't need
for
to do
you.
my hair or anything. It's just like mocap face mapped into like an anime girl. But then when you see me, I'm like a trash goblin.
With a bag of Doritos and dust.
Yeah,
all
like
over
dude,
your
I
face.
got Doritos, Mountain Dew Kickstart. I'm wearing just like stained gray sweatpants everywhere and
Oh, I love
sweatshirt.
that. Oh, it's so good. Perfect. Okay. So, if we're going back to the flowcharts on page 41, Street and Edge have 8 steps, whereas the complete package only has 6 because the last like 3 steps are bundled into one, which is like the last 6 step. So, because instead of like dividing out weapons, armor, cyberware, stuff like that, it's just all in one buy your stuff. So, basically, we have done one pick a roll and 2, run your life path. Now we're going to roll your statistics. This is where it diverges a little bit with Street and Edge compared to Complete Package, but all that means is that if you're doing the Street package or the Edge Runner package, you're going to be getting these like charts, and once again using the D10 to roll and pick stuff out. I'm going to go through like the different ways to do that. Or if you want to point by your statistics, then go ahead and go to page 78 and you get a certain amount of points that you can start buying your statistics at. If you want to buy your statistics, go ahead and go to that page. As of right now, I'm going to explain how the stat block works and then start explaining what each of the stats do while you guys are picking your stats, okay? So, if you go to page 73, the Street Rats template is, you'll see that there's just a D10 chart, 1 through 10, and all you do, it's very simple. You roll the D10 once, and then from left to right, it has your statistics in a row. It has intelligence, then reflex, then dex, then tech, then cool. So you roll a D10, I roll a 2, I would be on the 2 line, and it goes 7, 8, 6, 3, 6, 6, 7, you get it. So basically, Street Rats, super simple. You roll a D10, go from left to right, and do that. Now, important thing to know, starting on page 74, it's by roll. So each roll will have different charts, which makes sense because different rolls will want to have different stats. So if you want to do the Street Rat, you just go to these tables, you roll a D10, and you go from left to right and write in your stats. Now, if you want to do it for the Edge Runners, you're going to be using the exact same charts, but this time you roll a D10 for every single stat. So if I'm, for example, let's go to Rocker Boy. If for intelligence, I roll a D10, I get a 5. That means my intelligence is a 3. Then I go to reflex. I take the D10 and I roll it. It is a 9 for me. So then I go to the 9 and it says my reflex is a 5. So I do that for every single stat, once again, using these charts. And then of course, if you're doing it the complete package, your starting points is 62 points. And you divide those 62 points among your stats. If you do it evenly, it should be 6 for each stats. I'm gonna start explaining each of the different stats, but before I do that, do you guys have any questions about that? About how to do one of the 3 methods? Does that all kind of make sense?
No, that all makes sense for now.
All right, cool. So go ahead and start rolling, buying your stats or what have you, and I'm going to start explaining what each of these stats do. So these stats are divided into 4 groups. Really, it's 3, but luck gets its own group. So there is the mental group, which is intelligence, willpower, cool, and empathy. There is the combat group, which is technique and reflexes. The fortune group, which has luck, which I mentioned before. And the physical group, which is your body, dexterity, and movement. So, intelligence. That's in the mental group. It's generally how bright you are, just like sheer intelligence, cleverness, awareness, perception, and your ability to learn. Willpower. This is like your determination and ability to face danger or stress. It also represents your courage and ability to survive long-term privation. That's what it says on there. I'm not exactly sure what privation means, but I could look it up. But basically, when you think of privation, a state in which things that are essential for human well-being, such as food and warmth, are scarce or lacking. Okay, so willpower is going to be important if you want to have a lot of like HP, a lot of hit points. It is going to be body as well under physical group, but how hit points are determined, which we'll get to after we go through all these stats, one of the derived stats, it's your willpower times your body, the average of those, divided by 2. So it's basically like not only how good your body is, but also your willpower to live, which is really cool. So that's something to keep in mind when you're dividing out these stats. That willpower affects your health. Cool. Your ability to impress and influence people through your character and charisma. This is going to be, it's very, very good to have that as like a rocker boy, right? Like Dalton's character is going to want to have a lot of cool if they want to project themselves in the data pool and do all that kind of fun stuff. And lastly, in the mental group is your empathy. This is going to be super important for not going cyber psycho. Basically, and we'll get more into this in the cyber tech and everything like that, but as you augment your body and replace perfectly good organic parts with cybernetic parts, it affects your mental psyche. And you have your empathy that is translated into a pool of points that will diminish the more tech you put into your body. And if it gets too low to a certain point, you start to display like psychopathic tendencies, which we'll go more into when we get into the rule set and stuff like that. So that's why empathy's good if you want to have a lot of tech in your body, but also just to connect with people. Combat group, it is technique and reflexes. Technique is going to be like manipulating tools and instruments. It's going to be just like being able to like kind of like dexterously like handle stuff and everything, kind of like sleight of hand a little bit, but more so with like weapons. Reflexes is like not necessarily like your physical ability to react to stuff, but like mentally. Like dexterity is like being able to like jump out of the way of a car, but reflexes is like being able to recognize that a car is speeding at you and having the reaction time to do that. For example, we'll get into this more when we get into combat, but like normally when somebody shoots at you, this is where it kind of differs from D&D. If somebody shoots a gun at you, it's just a single difficulty value that they have to beat. But if your reflex is at an 8, you can instead use your dexterity to literally dodge bullets. So if you want to be able to dodge bullets, put your reflex at an 8. And we'll go more into that when we get there, but that's something to keep in mind if you want to be a bullet dodger, which is really cool. Luck. Luck is a really interesting stat. In previous editions, it sounds like luck was the dump stat. Do not dump luck. Luck, basically whatever your luck score is, that's how many points you have at the beginning of each session to just randomly help you out on a check. So basically, if your luck is at like a 5, that means you have 5 points each session that you can distribute 1 luck point at a time or all at once to like help out rolls. So we'll get into this, like I said, in combat. But for example, if you want to aim a shot at somebody's head, that is a penalty. You have like a -8 to that roll just right off the bat. But if you use your luck points and you say you have 5, that brings that penalty from a -8 down to a -3 instead. So that can like, if you really need to nail that headshot, luck can help out with that. So that's what's good about luck. It really helps you out with like negating like checks. It's all before you roll, but still good to know. Physical group. You have body. I mentioned this before. Size, toughness, ability to stay alive. You use this to help calculate health. Dexterity, that's like what I was saying before, where it's not reflexes, it's not your reaction time. Dexterity is actually being able to do the thing. Not just knowing that a car is coming to you, but jumping out of the way or being good with like hitting stuff. And then lastly is your movement, which is your speed of movement, running, leaping, swimming, etc. So yeah. So those are the stats and kind of like the stat groups. Does anybody have questions about like, yeah, go ahead, Ash.
For movement, is that a flat number or do I multiply it by something? So if my move is 7, that's 7 meters / yards.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So whatever your movement is, it makes it really nice because movement is factored in where whatever that number is, that's how many, if you're using like a grid, that's how many squares you can move. So if you're using a grid, that's how many squares you can use. If you want to factor it into like how many feet or whatever you'd use, it's factored into like yards meters, which is it's 2 meters or yards per like movement that you have. But each square is also considered like 2 yards. So ultimately, it's just whatever that number is how many squares you can move, which is cool. But yeah, so let's see here. What methods is everybody using for getting their stats?
I used the street rat. It was super easy.
Yeah. Good.
I did the same.
I did the point buy. I mean, it wasn't super hard. Like you get 62 points. There's 10 stats, so I gave everything a 6, and then automatically upped 2 of the stats that I felt were like important or like unique to my character. Up those by 1, and then just kind of went around like, well, I think my character is kind of like not super trained well, so I dropped like the reflexes and dexterity, and then upped their technique and luck and stuff, and just kind of like shifted down, shifted up.
Cool.
In pairs to keep the total at 62 points.
Perfect. What'd you do, Christian? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dave.
Sorry.
No.
I did the street rat as well, but I just want to point out there's something really hilarious about what I rolled. So remember how my character is like intellectual, standoffish, yada yada. Like I rolled a 5 for intelligence. So it's not very smart. He thinks he's smart, but he's not very smart. But he has an 8 reflex. So he can dodge bullets.
Perfect.
It makes him think that he's smarter than he is. Like his strategies work out because he's able to make it happen.
Yeah. Oh, that's perfect.
Like one quick little comment about the rulebook is it's super well hyperlinked.
Yes.
Like and tagged. Like all the pages in the sidebar have like if it references a term, it'll be like, hey, this is on this page. And that page number is hyperlinked and you can just click on it. I really appreciate effort being put into PDFs and helping because like having a physical book, it's pretty easy to like flip through and find things. And with a PDF, if you just have to like scroll up and down or like you aren't able to search it or like things aren't linked to other things, it becomes like a nightmare to navigate.
Right. You have to remember all the page numbers and stuff like that. So, and that's what's missing from a lot of, I think, tabletop RPGs, which we've flipped through plenty of books, PDFs already, playing online and everything. That usually it's pretty hard to navigate or like flipping through pages trying to find it. But yeah, everything's linked. It has it's constantly referring to different pages that you can just click on in this PDF and flip to it. Which out of all games that would have like a good PDF with accurate links, I feel like Cyberpunk being one of those makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Christian, what method did you use?
I've been doing the complete package or calculated for everything.
Perfect.
Been trying to kind of, I don't know,
figure out what you want to do.
I guess what I want to do. I've been very customized on a lot of my life path and and this as well. So I have an 8 in intelligence, reflex, dexterity, and tech, and then a 7 in move. So I'm lacking in. I'm kind of squishy, but the point for me is that I'm trying to be.
You're not frontline.
Yeah, I'm trying to be, technologically fit for anything I need to do in the net. And then if I'm out of the net, ideally, I'm moving very quickly. I'm dodging bullets, and I'm trying to get up close and personal and taking people out with my katana / throwing knives.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the play style I'm going with. Yeah.
All right. Perfect. Next up, we're heading to derived statistics. I already talked about HP a little bit. If you go to page 79, so like I mentioned before, hit points is equal to 10 plus your body and will average rounding up times 5. So sorry. It's your body and will averaged, rounding up, times that by 5, and then add 10 to that.
There's a table to do it for you.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, but if that's hard to do, at the bottom of page 79, nice table. Love this. I love flowcharts. I love all the tables. Look where your will is. If it's a 6, go to 6. Look where your body is. If it's a 7, go to 6 and 7. That's 45. Boom. There you are. So super nice. Super helpful. So that's like the first derived statistic. And then the last one is humanity, which is just like taking your empathy score, whatever that is, and make it into a tens. So like if you have 5, you have 50 humanity. And we'll go more into what the lower statistics and how cyberpsychosis affects that when we get to it. But like I said, this is going to be important for like when we're going to that. On top of that, it does say, let's see here. Make sure after you calculate your HP, your character's seriously wounded wound threshold is half of your total HP rounded up. And then your death save is equal to your body statistic. So those are all right below your hit points and right below humanity. So just make sure you write that down too. Yeah. Next up, we're going to be going to skills. So starting on page 1, there is a bunch of summaries for all these different skills, which I'm going to go to in a second. But basically, if you start at page 86, that's where we get into how you pick your skills. So Street Rat, just like before, it's all pre-made for you. So like, for example, Rocker Boy is right there. It already has like a bunch of just set skill numbers that you just fill that in and you're all set. And then for Edge Runners, basically, Edge Runners, you get a little bit of like how you organize your skills. So basically, you get to decide, just like you did for some of you did for the point buy. You get 86 skill points that you get to divide. A key things to know is that no skill can be higher than 6 or lower than 2. And there are some skills that are considered like basic that you need to have at least a 2 in. And those are athletics, brawling, concentration, conversation, education, evasion, first aid, human perception, your street slang language, your local expert, perception, persuasion, stealth. And this is all on page 88. If you are... What's
those
that?
are conveniently, I said, I was going to say, those are all bolded as
Yes.
skills in the character sheet. So it's really easy to just put 2s next to those at the very least.
The reason why the game does this is because it thinks a lot of these skills you don't need to have. It's just how you want to play the game, and that's what's important when you're picking skills is how you want to play the game. But those ones that are bolded, specifically, they're like every character should have this. Usually, every cyberpunk should have these skills because they're probably going to use them at some point or another. So if you see that a skill has a ×2 next to it, that means it costs double the amount to buy. So it doesn't cost 1 point, it costs 2 points per level. And then, but the 4 levels of your language are free. So don't factor that into your skill points. The 4 that we already wrote down does not factor in. It's just the 86 is divided into everything else. The thing to know is that continuing off of that for Edge Runner is that, as you can see, it shows the skills that for each class that it says you have to divide those into. So Rocker Boy, it has like all of the bolded, but then it has like composition, handgun, melee weapon, personal grooming, play instrument, streetwise, wardrobe and style. So it has that for each of those classes. So it's saying, hey, take these 86 points, divide that into all these things. All the bold that are there has to have 2 at least. So that's what you need to do for that. And then it gives some examples bottom there. And then the differences between that and the complete package is that really it just says like, all right, you just take those 86 points and put them wherever you want. So that's what's the difference between Edge Runners and complete package for this is that Edge Runners, it says, all right, here's the skills you need to divide them into. Complete package just says just put them where you want to put them. So, if that makes sense to everyone, I'll start talking about the different skills while you guys are picking out your skills and stuff. But does anybody have any questions about skills for right now?
I don't have any outright questions about it, but there's a lot here.
Yes.
And I don't think we're really going to be using them at all today.
Yeah.
So is this something we can probably, if we are a little overwhelmed, put this like on the back burner and make sure we just come to session 1 with them all selected properly?
Absolutely. Yes. So that is something we can do.
You might be getting into this later, but is there like a context for what these numbers mean?
Yes.
Or like how maxing out the level is at 10 and like
yeah.
do I roll against this or is this a modifier or like what do the numbers mean that I'm writing on
What do
my
the
sheet
numbers
right
mean?
now?
Mason.
what do the numbers mean, Mason? Yeah. I'll that's a great point. Let me explain that real quick. So if you look on your character sheet, there is of course your stats. That's what like is going to affect generally a lot of these different skills. Each of the skills are attached to the stat. The most the stat can be when you're starting out, which is what we made before we went to skills, is an 8. That's the max that a stat can be. When we're making these skills, the highest rank those skills can be is a 6 right now. When we're playing the game, most interactions, just like I was saying before, like the D10 is like the D20 of this system. If you look on next to each skill, there's a level that's where you're writing down your skill level, where you're buying these skills. So let's say if I have athletics and I wanted to be very athletic, I did a 4 with that. And then let's say it uses my dex. Let's say my dex, I had it at a 5. So my level is a 4. The stat, which is the dex, which is the box right next to it, I'm going to write a 5 in there on the character sheet because the stat level is a 4. I bought that. The level for the skill is a 4, which I just bought. The stat that it uses is dex, which my dex is a 5, so I write 5 next to it. And the base, which is the third box that's right next to that, is those two added together. So if my athletics is a skill 4, and my dexterity is a level 5, my base would be a 9. And what I do, whenever you're rolling for something, like if you're like, Spencer, I want to try to climb up this building. I'm like, okay, that's going to be an athletics check. You would take a D10 and roll it, and you would add your level for the skill and your stat together, plus whatever you rolled on the D10. Or you can just add your base because that's both of them together. So it's always a D10 plus your stat, your skill, and then the D10. So D10, stat, skill, add them together, and that's what you roll. So I rolled a 7 plus my 9, that's a 16. So if I say the difficulty value was 15, I'd pass. So that's kind of how that works in this. Does that help out?
I think so.
Cool.
So it sounds like we have this level. The stat comes from the stats that we have here. We roll a d10 and add our base to it, which is level plus stat, and that is the roll that's compared next to the difficulty value.
Yep.
Great.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, yeah. So you guys can do that if you're doing skills. We're going to move on to weapons and armor. So this is going to be page 91. This is step 6 of Street Rat and Edge Runner. However, if before we go into it, before we start going into this is the major deviation from Edge Runner and Street Rats, which is going to be like either like just handed to you what you have or like a like given to you, compared to what you do with complete package. So if you want to do this, I recommend to everybody here, because there's a lot of weapons, armor, cyberware, and stuff like that. I think everybody here should do the Edge Runner or the Street Rat formula. But if you want to do the complete package, right now, go start going to page 91 for a list of weapons, armor, gear, fashion, cyberware. You're gonna have 255 eddies, or 2,550 eddies to spend on any weapons, armor, gear, fashion, cyberware, and 800 eddies to spend specifically on fashion and fashion wear. This is all detailed on page 40 in the flowchart on page 42. If you're doing that. But if you want to start buying that stuff, go ahead and start looking through and doing that. If not, everybody else, come with me to page 91, where we start picking up weapons and armor for our characters, for Street Runner and Edge Runner. So,
Did you not want to go over what the skills were?
oh, I still can. I'm sorry, I thought we were skipping that.
Well, I didn't know if we were skipping like what the skills were, but more letting people pick their skills on their own time.
Oh
since
yeah,
there's a lot to pick.
Of course. Yeah, I'll go over the the skills real quick. So once again, just like how we had the different groups for your stats, the skills are also divided into different stuff. There are awareness skills, body skills, control skills, educational skills, fighting skills, performance skills, ranged weapon skills, social skills, and technique skills. So we're going to start in the awareness skills section. If you look on your character sheet, it divides these all into these different categories too, which is super nice. So awareness skills, you have concentration, which is like focus and mental control, like memory, recall, ignoring distractions, and psychological mastery. It's like how well you can concentrate. Conceal, reveal object. So this is like hiding a gun in your jacket. This is like hiding a specific like weapon or something on you, so people don't like see like, oh, that guy's got a knife or that guy's got a gun on him. Yeah.
He's got a gun in his butt.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you can hide that gun in your butt.
How expensive do you think a gun butt implant would be?
Just like would the barrel of the rifle come out of the butthole?
You can
Very
choose to poop or poop bullets.
That's a luxury item.
I feel
It's
like that would
1,000
be-
eddies.
That would be controlled by like a button or something. You know, like you would have to have like different poop mode and shoot mode, or poop shoot mode where you turn the poop into bullets.
Oh, it's both.
Yeah.
It gets like hyper compressed.
Oh man. Anyways, more awareness skills. We have lip reading. We have perception, which is just like perception in other tabletop RPG skills of spotting hidden things like clues, traps, people using the stealth skill, but not objects hidden with the conceal reveal object. Let's see here. Tracking. That's like specifically observing tracks and other clues left behind. So that's like kind of like discovering that kind of stuff. Body skills. Athletics, skill jumping, climbing, throwing, swimming, lifting, weights, etc. Contortionist. That's like skill of manipulating your body to get out of handcuffs or other bindings to fit yourself into otherwise inaccessible places or spaces, so like when you hear that skill, you're like, when would I ever use that? So like the game even says specifically like some skills never come up and some will always come up. Like those are the bolded skills that they say will always come up. But like it's when you're picking these skills, it's all about whatever you want to do if you're doing like the complete package. On page 134, it specifically talks about this. I can say as like reading the GM section, it tells me specifically like, hey, look at your players' sheets, look at what skills they picked, look at what roles they do. And when you design stuff for those skills to be used.
Yeah.
Which I think is really important to do.
Yeah, like if I put points into dance, it's kind of on me to like try to use it. It's not necessarily just going to always come up. I have to like put effort into making it come up. Whereas like shooting a gun, that's probably going to come up more often than not. I don't need to put effort into making gun come up.
Which, speaking of which, keeping on with the body skills, dance. Dance is the next skill. We have endurance, which is surviving harsh environmental conditions. There is a resist torture / drugs skill. Skill of resisting painful effects, including interrogation, torture, and drugs. It seems like, well, if we've established at the beginning that we don't want torture in the game, when would that ever come up? Well, there are street drugs, and that skill becomes very important if you start doing street drugs. So that's a whole section of it itself. So
mine's like a base 13. I'm doing all the drugs. I'm doing all the drugs. I'm doing all of them.
Maybe Ashley can give you therapy to help you.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm gonna be making drugs, so
I'll be your guinea pig. There we go. Like, and I'll test their combat effectiveness.
Oh my God. Wow.
There we go.
Awesome.
There we go. There's the origin story.
Next up, body skill, we have stealth. Then we're moving on to control skills. So you have like drive land vehicle, pilot air vehicle, which specifically is a ×2. It takes more of an investment to know how to pilot like flying vehicles. Pilot sea vehicle, riding, which is like a skill of riding a living creature trained for that purpose. It's specifically, so speaking of like animals not being a thing, like for this skill, it like specifically says later on, like the only way you would probably have this skill is if you were raised in like in like a higher up like executive world where they had like private horse race tracks, and that's where you learned how to ride a horse. Like that's the only way you know how to ride a living animal, which is I think is so neat. Next up, we have educational skills. We got like accounting. We got animal handling. We got bureaucracy, which is like specifically like government, like bureaucracy and stuff. Very different from accounting, let me tell you. Business, general business law. A lot of this is good for the exec role.
Do they have bird law?
You can specialize in bird law, I'm sure. Composition, which is professionally writing songs, articles, or stories. Criminology, so different from tracking. This is specifically looking for clues by dusting off for fingerprints, doing ballistic tests, examining evidence, and searching through police records and files. So if you want to be a private eye, that's like stuff you can invest in. Cryptology, skill of encrypting, decoding messages. Deduction. So this deduction is, though, while the criminology is like using like fingerprints and modern day kind of evidence, deduction is like Sherlock Holmesing it. Like skill of tracking clues and leading to non-obvious conclusions or medical diagnosis, like being like, elementary, my dear Watson, type deal. Education, which is like your formal education, like read, write, basic math, stuff like that. Gamble, language, we kind of went over that a little bit. Library search, which is very much like library use in Call of Cthulhu. Local expert, which is like a specific area that you're like knowledgeable about. Science, which just like Call of Cthulhu, you have to pick a specific field, and that's what you've done research and knowledge in. You have tactics, which is like large scale battle tactics. Wilderness survival, which is skill for knowing how to survive comfortably in the wilderness, which is different from endurance. Endurance is like you naturally being able to just kind of like sustain like long periods of time without eating, which is like wilderness survival is like, well, I know how to like forage and find food in the wild. So fighting skills, brawling, evasion. So for example, I mentioned earlier dodging bullets. You have to have a reflex of 8 to be able to react fast enough to a bullet coming at you. But to actually dodge the bullet, if your reflex is 8, you then do a dex plus this evasion skill in order to, and plus a d10 in order to dodge out of the way of bullet. So instead of when a person shoots at you, they're trying to beat a difficulty value, they roll against you, essentially, in trying to dodge that bullet, which is neat. Martial arts, which are super neat in this game, super cool. Basically you can just specialize in like a specific like like style, and you get access to like different moves. And if you succeed on doing that martial art move, you inflict a critical injury on somebody, which is awesome. I really love that they added like martial art styles. Like I was reading karate, which I'm trained in, and was like, oh, this is accurate. This is cool. Melee weapons. Skill for fighting with a melee weapon. Very simple. Performance skills. You got acting, playing an instrument, ranged weapon skills, archery, which is like specifically like bow and arrow crossbows, auto fire. So this is where it starts getting interesting. Auto fire is a ×2 skill because there are specific rules for like fully automatic fire with your shoulder arms rifles and stuff like that, or an SMG. It's a very cool mode. It's very powerful, and it's not super complicated like in Call of Cthulhu. So I recommend if you are doing like Dan as a solo, if you're doing shoulder arms, whatever weapons you're gonna do, if you're gonna do like assault rifles and stuff, putting some points into auto fire is very good.
Yeah, my auto fire is max.
Great. Yes, Ash?
So for calculating that, what do you multiply by 2?
It just costs 2 points for every 1 rank. So
Yes.
rank 1 costs 2 points, a rank 2 costs 4 points when you're buying that skill.
That'll only be relevant if you're doing like the Edge Runner character building or the complete package character building.
Okay.
If you're doing the template, the Street Rat, you don't really need that's already factored in.
Yep.
Mhm. So if I wanted to spend 8 points on buying the auto fire skill, that would put me at a level 4.
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. More weapons. We got handguns. Heavy weapons is a ×2 as well. That's like rocket launchers and grenade launchers. That's like big explosives. Shoulder arms. That's rifles and shotguns. Anything you would like use your shoulder to like reinforce as you fire. Social skills. We got bribery. We got conversation, which conversation is interesting. It's not like I'm going to go in and get a specific piece of information. It's like going up to somebody, engaging in casual conversation and whatever they kind of reveal to you.
Mhm.
Like going up to a bodyguard and being like, hey man, how's the shift going? And smoking up a cigarette. And then like you may want to know like when is his shift ending and I can sneak in. He may not tell you when he's going off his shift, but if you engage in conversation with him, he may reveal like, oh yeah, like Mark, like who works behind the building, like he's always like he always takes his pee breaks at the dumpster, and we think that's really gross. And so then oh okay, maybe we can sneak in when Mark's taking his piss.
Yeah.
Like something like that. I don't know.
Like I moved some
Yeah.
points into that one because I imagine like I'm a streamer. I do like free talk streams where you just kind of like fucking talk and talk and talk and like interact with chat or whatever. And that's part of like the performing.
Yes. Human perception is kind of like insight in D&D, where it's like reading a person's face to discern emotional state or detect lies and deception. Interrogation is like specifically like in the police room and like it being like, we know you did the crime. Persuasion is like convincing people like, hey, you should do this or tell me this type deal. Personal grooming is like styling and making yourself attractive. Streetwise is like something like a fixer would do. It's like knowing how to get illegal goods and having good contacts and stuff like that. Trading is like once again kind of like a fixer thing where it's like getting good deals and stuff like that. There are specific rules. There's a lot of specific rules that help out with a lot of this stuff. Wardrobe and style, once again, just knowing how to wear clothes and wear them cool. Then we go into technique skills. A lot of good stuff for fixer roles. In Nomads, you got like air vehicle tech, which is like repairing and maintaining air vehicles. You got basic tech, which is like anything that's not covered by other skills. Like this is like, I don't know, simple devices like phones, stuff like that. Because then you get into cyber tech, which is specifically cybernetics. You got demolitions, which is a ×2 because it's dealing with explosives. You have electronics/security tech, which is also a ×2, specifically like computers, cybernetics, electronics, like that's like electrical engineering stuff. First aid And anybody having first aid is pretty good for patching quick patches up and like stabilizing people till they can get to a hospital. Forgery, making false documents, land vehicle tech, similar to Air One, repairing and maintaining land vehicles. Paint, draw, sculpt, professional paintings, drawing, sculpture. Paramedic is a ×2 one as well. That we can go more into this when we talk about injury and recovery, but this is like specifically patching somebody up. This is something that's important to Ashley's role. Photography and film, photos, videos, brain dances, like it's like producing that. Like me, I video edit personally, so like it's like having that kind of skill. Kind of important for media. Pick lock, skill for bypassing non-electrical locks. Pickpocket, which is like picking somebody's pocket. C vehicle tech, like the other two vehicles, it's just about repairing and maintaining C vehicles. And last but not least, we have weapons tech, which is repairing and maintaining weapons of all types. And that are all the skills. Any questions?
No.
Cool.
Seems very
Perfect.
similar to like your Call of Cthulhu's and like your basic role playing systems, or like there's a whole bunch of them.
There is, yes.
I actually do have one question.
Yeah, go ahead.
If I am doing a skill check in something like, I don't know, personal grooming, which I haven't taken any points in. So to calculate my base for that, would it just be my level would be 0, my statistic would be my cool, and then my
Yep.
base would be just my cool stat, basically?
You nailed it.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah. So next on, like I said, if you're going to be buying a lot of your stuff in the complete package, go ahead and start like using the allocated money to start doing that. If not, which I recommend for you guys, we're going to head to page 98 to start getting weapons and armor. Now, from page 91 to 98, it gives brief descriptions of like weapons and armor above. Kind of explains a little bit more what they do and stuff like that. But right below all those basic descriptions are what you guys are going to do. So basically, for edge runners and street rats, basically here's it divides once again. Just lists things that it recommends for each of your classes to have. Street Rat and Edge Runner characters also get 500 eddies to spend on other items or to keep and use later, such as like bribing somebody or paying your rent. So go ahead and look under each of these things for each of your classes. Write down which ones you kind of want. And then like either we can spend the 500 above on something else or keep it for later. So this is just weapons and gear, by the way.
Mhm.
So this is just going over like what armor you have and what pistols and stuff you have. And while we're talking about this, I'm gonna talk about armor because armor is really cool. If you guys, yeah, sorry.
Is there a bit on the character sheet to keep track of how much money you have that I'm not seeing? Oh, I see it. There's cash by all of the other gear.
Perfect. Oh yeah, on page 2. Got it. Perfect. Yeah. So as you're kind of looking at all this different stuff, armor is really cool because like how armor works is basically there is what's called SP or stopping power. And I love how this works because basically, like for example, let's look at Solo. So let's look at Dan. He has armor for his head and his body. Those how in Cyberpunk 2020 it used to divide it into like arms, legs, and head and body. In Cyberpunk Red, they simplified it to just have you have your body and you have your head. You can still lose a limb and stuff like that with critical injuries, but like that's stuff for later. Basically, the Solo, if you look at his chart on page 98, he gets light armor jack for body armor, and light armor jack for head armor. And it says SP11. That stands for stopping power 11. That means that if he gets shot with a bullet, if an enemy makes a roll, hits the DV within range, and hits Dan, that has, if it does damage to him, 11 of that damage is blocked by the armor. So whatever bullet they shoot, 11 that is blocked by the armor. Say they shoot a handgun and it's 2d6, so they take 2d6 and they roll it. I got an 8. So that would just, the armor just blocks that, and it doesn't work.
No.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, never mind. Continue. I have a question, but it's not related. So.
No worries. Now say they shoot a bigger pistol and it's 3d6, and I roll 2 6s and a 4, so that's 16 damage. So 11 of that damage on Dan's body is blocked by that armor. So that means that 5 of it still goes through. Since damage goes through, he takes that 5 damage to his health pool, but his armor, now that damage has gone through, it's used up the full 11 blockage, that armor ablates. So it decreases its stopping power by 1 from an 11 to a 10. And that happens each time damage goes through the armor. So basically, the more you use your armor and the more you get hit, the weaker your armor gets. So I think that's really cool how they do that in combat. As people shoot you and as your armor is being used, it like decreases over time, but it still provides like a good amount of damage blockage as you get hit. So. I haven't gotten into like guns or anything yet, just because like it just gives basic examples and talks about them above. But we can go more into like combat when we kind of get there and everything.
I have a gun question, Spencer.
Yeah, go ahead.
What's the viability of like does multi-attack exist in this? Like if I were to have 2 pistols, like if I were to dual wield pistols, right?
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
Yes. I'd have to specifically look up dual wielding pistols because I didn't see any specific rules on dual wielding just to make sure it's viable. But what I can say is multiple attacks do exist. They have this thing called rate of fire, ROF,
right,
in Cyberpunk. And basically, it should, when we go to like the full weapons, like the guns and melee weapons and stuff like that, each weapon has a rate of fire. Something like a shotgun may only get like one shell per round, but like a pistol may have 2 or more. And then that's also another thing where we have full auto kind of come into play, where you're shooting 10 bullets, and some of those bullets may hit, and some of those bullets may not.
Yeah. Okay.
So yes, there are multiple attacks. I will get back to you on dual wielding pistols, but for the most part, each weapon individually has a rate of fire that can shoot and everything.
Well, so I guess my question would be theoretically then, like if I have the 1 pistol and rate of fire of 2, right?
Yeah.
That 1 pistol can shoot twice in 1 round of combat.
Yeah.
So if I have 2 pistols that can
Right.
shoot twice, is that like bop, 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 which, if we're talking about like a round being 6 seconds, that's totally viable.
Yeah. A round is actually 3 seconds in this.
3, that's still viable.
Yeah, I don't know. They never mentioned dual wielding in any of the combat stuff that I read, so I'll double check on dual wielding. I have no idea about that.
I'm seeing like on a lot of the guns they have like a hands required stat. So I'm assuming if it has like a hands required of 2, it can't be dual wielded. If you only need 1 hand, it can be. Like
So there we go.
I would assume that's all that really does.
I guess my question is, are you going to let 4 shots a game or a turn of combat?
Yeah.
Guys.
Whatever
Okay.
you do, the enemies can do better.
Well, I'll shoot them. So.
So there we go.
All right.
Yeah. Next up, we're going to be doing outfits. That starts on page 99. It's really interesting because it actually gives you like full on like how to read outfits and stuff like that. But then your actual outfit and charts for that is page 103. So once again, it for each role, it gives you stuff that you pick out for your that it thinks that you would wear. But like obviously, I think like for example, it says the let's see here, the rocker boy outfit is a generic cheek, but like you said you wear bohemian stuff. So I would definitely say like just write down that you have bohemian wear. Or sorry, no, who was bohemian? It was Dan. Dan, sorry, Dan. You just even though it says like you should have like mirror shades and 3 jackets and all leisure wear, just write down that you have like bohemian wear instead. So but yeah, so like once again, it just gives you examples of like what you wear and stuff like that, and that's important for like for example, if Dalton's character who's a rocker boy, I would imagine that you have your general cheek like outfit, but you probably also have like your sweats and stuff that you wear outside of your gig, right? Or
Huh?
do you?
Oh,
Do
I
you
don't have any. I totally
it's,
removed any points I had in personal grooming and wardrobe and style. Those aren't there.
So there we go. So that's important for if like Dalton's rocker boy tries to go to a club. We'll be like, no, get out of here, you stinking pile of mess.
What? I'm still streetwise though. I still got streetwise points. And I have points in dance now, so that's going to be important.
You could dance your way
I can
in.
dance.
So yeah, so that's on page 103. 103 has all of your outfits for each of your characters. So write those down.
What's air hypo?
That's how you administer drugs. Everybody has that on them. Basically, it's kind of like think about like an inhaler that has like a little tube that you can switch out for different drugs. It's just like an easy applicable thing to take in drugs.
And what's an agent?
An agent.
Your
Oh,
phone.
glad you asked.
It's a smartphone.
Yeah. It's a smartphone that's kind of like a dumb AI.
Nice.
Yeah. So it can like manage
Like
stuff.
Siri.
Yeah, exactly. Like some they specifically say is that you can customize how your agent looks, and some people do use them as replacement partners. So
Again, like Mega Man Netrunners or the Mega Man thing, your Net Navi. Actually, starting on page 100 is the gear table. It has like the name of the thing, but also like an actual description of what it is. So you're not just kind of guessing on lingo.
I see that. That's lovely. So since the agent gives a +2 to library search and +2 to wardrobe and style, am I supposed to put that under my skills?
Yes.
Okay.
Wait, what are you? A +1 to wardrobe and style?
If you look at agent on page 100,
Mhm.
it gives you a +2 to library search and a +2 to wardrobe and style under some circumstances.
Oh, that's probably like, well, I guess it says see page 352 for more information, but I'm assuming that's kind of like bonuses you can get if it's relevant to that particular check.
Mm-hmm. So and I would definitely write that off to the side or something like that, or
like
make
in the
a
notes.
note of it. Yeah, just because like you can rank up your levels and your stats with different things, and in like Dalton said, it definitely depends on the circumstance.
In addition to all this, an agent gives the user +2 to their library search skill and +2 to their wardrobe and style skill, but only if you wear the clothes your agent suggests for you, which change every season. Multiple agents don't multiply these bonuses. So it looks like it's kind of keyed in on the trends, and if you're following trends, you get some bonuses.
Yeah. And whenever you guys are ready, we're gonna move on to cyberware.
Let's go. I
All
think
right.
this is another thing that is just so many options that we'll do it over the next week.
Go to page 117 once again for street rats and edge runners. It has every class and what cyberware recommends. It also has the humanity loss already pre-calculated for you, that of how much it deducts from this cyberware. So that's really important to know, especially as we go more into cyberpsychosis and stuff like that. So take a look at those, see what that is. And I'll kind of start generally talking about what cyberware does. Like Don says, so when I was thinking about like specifically like edge runners and like street rats and like having you guys like specifically like pick stuff, like for me personally, I think I would have calculated my stats. I might have bought my specific weapons and stuff that I wanted to do. But here, like cyberware, there is so much, and it's kind of like you need some components before others to work. That like that's why I would just do Edge Runner for this, or the Street Rats for this, the templates essentially, just because there's so much. So it starts on page 111, and it goes through like fashion wear. So what you'll see is that there are so many slots that you can do. And this is where you use your third page for this, where it shows your body with all the different stats in it, or all the different boxes and everything. That's where this comes important, because there are only so many slots you have to like put stuff in. And this makes sense because you only have 2 arms, or you only have 2 legs. And there's only so much stuff you can hook up. And depending on how many open slots that has, it does different stuff. But before we go into slots and everything, some of the things I want to talk about is like cyberpsychosis. Cyberpsychosis is as you chop off like an arm to put in a cyber arm, or as you cut off a leg, or as you take out your eye. It specifically notes that any like fully functional like organ that you're taking out incurs that humanity loss, because no normal person would like chop off of a perfectly functioning organ or body part and be okay. It specifically describes how cyberpsychosis manifests, is that like because you're choosing to cut off like an arm or something and replace it with like a part, you start to view your body as not as like a thing, or like a more distant thing than like literally being you, which I think is really cool. But that also means that, like, for example, if you lost a leg or if you lost an arm, replacing that leg or arm with just like a basic, like, not a cyber arm, but like with just like a basic prosthetic that like functions normally, that doesn't cost any humanity loss because it's just replacing that limb. It also specifically says for gender affirming surgery that doesn't take any humanity loss. That's you affirming what your body is and what you view your body to be. So there's no humanity loss for any gender affirming surgery as well, which I think is a really cool concept, is that it specifically notes like you only have negative impact if it's like you're like replacing a part that's like a part of you. And I think that's neat. And that's where cyberpsychosis comes in. But
Do I
yeah.
do I have to do the street rat or edge runner for my cyberware?
You don't have to. I just recommend it. You just have to go through all the different cyberware to kind of pick out what you want to do.
There's a thing, I don't know if you're gonna get to it, but you are able to acquire more money at the cost of being with indebted to a corporation, basically.
Correct.
And then that comes with downsides to ensure your loyalty.
Yep, sure does.
And I'm doing it.
No, that's
What?
perfect.
I'm already like a corpo clone. Like clone runners, so like it would just make sense anyway.
Yeah.
Like but it does come with a free So you get $1,500 or 1,500 euro bucks extra, and it does come with a free what's it called? A neural link, so you don't have
Yeah.
to pay for that.
Nice.
Is it
How
neural?
much?
Yeah.
How
Are
much
you
money?
just doing it to get the Mr. Stud sexual implant
Definitely.
Or you
all
have
night, every night, and they'll never know?
How much money do you get?
So that is on. So it does say in there, I think a little bit lower, but if you go to the flowchart on page 42, it does say like you get 2,550 eddies to spend on weapons, armor, gear, fashion, cyberware, like total. And then you have 800 eddies to spend specifically on fashion and fashion wear. And the thing too important to note about that money, that 2,550, whatever you don't spend, you get to hold on to. But for the fashion and fashion wear, the 800, whatever you don't spend goes away. So that's a spend or lose it. But the 2,550 eddies to spend on all the other stuff, that's you just have that. So
Oh, you
Well,
get
now time to pull out my calculator.
get fashion wear money specifically?
yeah,
Oh,
it's
okay, 800. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks like most of the fashion and fashion wear aren't super like mechanically relevant, so it's just kind of like
no, it's yeah.
you could have this
Yeah,
too.
yeah. I was like, oh, I have to use the 2,500 for this when I have all this other
No.
stuff. No,
No,
okay,
it's the 800. Yeah.
that's good.
Yeah, because
I
the fashion
didn't
wear,
see that.
like we were saying, that's the biomonitor, that's the chem skin, that's a light tattoo, that's like tech hair, that's like all the stuff that makes you visually cool. Like, and that's all factored into fashion. Whereas, like, as we go deeper, which is like the next page, 112, as we go deeper into cyberware, if you look at each of these tables, whatever is black at the top, that's you need that first. Usually, you need that first before you get anything else. The good news is, whatever you're getting, it usually has a bolded letter of whatever you need prior in order to put that in. Like, if we're talking about, let's see, cyber optics. The basics for cyber optics is a cyber eye. That makes sense. You need to actually have a cyber eye in there before you start installing stuff into that. So, like, for example, Cyber Eye, it says it has 3 option slots. So whenever you install a Cyber Eye, you can only put 3. You only have 3 option slots to fill that with. If you get something like a dart gun, that takes all 3 option slots. It says in bold under the dart gun at the bottom of page 112, requires a Cyber Eye and takes 3 option slots. So if you get a dart gun in that eye, you can't get other stuff. Like, for example, the anti-dazzle at the top, that not only it requires both of your cyber eyes and must be paired. So, but it doesn't say it takes an option slot. So it looks like you can just get that, which is cool. So never mind. You can have a dart gun and anti-dazzle.
Well, I think by default it's going to require 1 slot.
Okay.
It's only if it takes more than that it'll
It
specify.
says, okay, so that makes sense. Yeah, because low light takes 2 option slots. Requires 2 cyber eyes, must be paired, and takes 2 option slots. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, yeah. So basically that's how that kind of works. Whatever you get on your body, there's usually in black the base part that you need, and then you can get other stuff on top of that. And as you can see to the right of it, there's always a cost associated with whatever you're buying. And then if you're Christian, it sounds like you're doing the buy for the cyberware. Like you're buying stuff?
So, yeah.
Okay. So
yeah.
if you look to the right of that, the HL stands for humanity loss.
Yeah.
When you're doing that, do not roll the dice. You take whatever the main number is.
Yeah, that's what I've been grabbing.
Okay, good. The dice that they showed to it. So, like, for example, the Cyber Audio Suite, it shows 7 for the humanity loss, in parentheses 2d6. The 7 is for, like, when you are right now when you're installing it as a character building thing. The 2d6 is that if you installed it later, like in the middle later on in the game, you would roll 2d6, and that's how much humanity loss you'd be incurring. So. But like we were saying before, Edge Runner and Street Rat, you don't have to do all these calculations and stuff. It has the humanity loss pre-calculated for you in each of those little sections on page 117.
See, I get that, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But I could get vampires and have fangs implanted in my mouth that are concealed, and I can add poison or biotoxin to them.
Yeah. This is really cool,
Or I
isn't
can
it?
get gills. Or I can be a cyber snake and have a giant esophagus mounted, very heavy melee weapon that can be concealed. Like, I'm just saying.
Yeah. Just make sure if you're mixing like the default outfit and equipment and like picking your cyberware, you have to count up how much that default equipment that you got earlier, how much that cost, and subtract it from the 2,500. You don't have just fully
definitely will
2,500 just for cyberware.
to do that.
While you guys are finishing that up, we only have a short amount of time before we're supposed to log off today. So I'm just going to go over some of the basic rules. We talked about skill resolutions. It's a D10 plus your skill level plus your stat added together. Your skill level and your stat is the base on the sheet. You should be writing your base for what each of those are there. That's kind of like basic resolution for a lot of different stuff. During combat, you basically get one move action and one action, which action can be a bunch of different stuff, such as attacking, getting to a vehicle, getting up, grabbing, hold, run, stabilize, starting a vehicle, throw, using a net action, object, or skills. Now, even though it says one action, that can be divided up. So if you attack, remember I said there's a ROF, like a rate of fire? That's where the multi-attack comes in. So if you have 2 rate of fire, using that attack action, you get 2 attacks. For net runners, they have, when you use a net action, you actually get multiples that divides into however many net actions you have based on your net runner rank. So bunch of different stuff with that. Let's see here. Yeah, for skills, it's either going to be a you versus a defender, like attacker versus defender skill like contest, or it's going to be versus difficulty value. Difficulty values are on page 129. Simple tasks have a difficulty value of 9, a DV of 9. Everyday tasks are a DV of 13. Difficult tasks are a DV of 15. Professional tasks are a DV of 17. Heroic tasks are a DV of 21. An incredible task is a DV of 24. And a legendary task is a DV of 29. So as you can see, it's kind of like on a scale of 1 to 29 a little bit. But as you can see, like your skills, when you're building a character, you're maxed out at 6, and your stats are maxed out at 8. So really how you get past those meat bag limitations is by like chipping in and chroming up chooms. So yeah, we talked a little bit about luck. I talked about luck a little bit, which is just like you can spend luck to increase the roll. It works on checks. The only thing I found with luck points that you can't spend on is you can't spend it on believability rolls, which is like a specific media thing. And you also can't use it on damage. I didn't get a confirmation, but it specifically says like to a check, and damage rolls aren't checks. So I haven't seen anywhere that you can use it for damage, which makes sense.
Yeah.
So
It's probably, you could use it to like try to dodge, not get hit, but not necessarily like once you're hit, you're hit.
Yeah.
You're going to take damage.
Some cool other notes. This is page 130 has like a lot of good stuff on just rolls and everything. There's critical successes. So if you roll a natural 10, you roll another d10 and add that. They don't stack, so you can't just keep rolling 10s. Same thing, critical failures. You roll run, you roll a d10, and subtract the result. And you can't just keep rolling critical fails. So it only happens once. Instead of like, so like for skill checks, it basically how game masters can modify skill checks. Like it could be like an everyday task with a DV of 13, but like it shows on page 130 there's like negative modifiers. So like if you're under extreme stress, that's a -2. If you're extremely drunk, that's a -4. So like there can be different things that affect your character, such as have never done this before. That's a -1. So like different things that can affect an everyday task to make it harder, especially for the first time. Important thing to know, there's something called trying again. If you fail a skill check, you can't try again unless the chances of success have improved for some reason. You took longer, used a better tool, or you made a complementary skill check, which complementary skill checks are when you use one of the skills directly, where the use of one skill directly affects the use of a subsequent skill. At my discretion, at the GM's discretion, a good roll in one skill may confer a +1 bonus to the subsequent use of a related skill, so long as it makes sense, essentially. Taking extra time, if you take extra time, you get a single +1 bonus to it. And then yeah, it says right here, like you were asking before, Ashley, if you don't have the skill, you use the stat and you roll a d10. That's how you use that. So yeah. Let's see here. Okay. I'm going to talk about a few of the differences in the jumpstart, and then I want to talk real quick on Bartle taxonomy, and then we can probably call it there if that's okay with everybody. So a lot of you were reading the jumpstart, and something I want to say about the jumpstart is that it came out a year before this core rulebook. The Jumpstart kit came out at Gen Con in 2019, and then the Cyberpunk Red core rulebook came out a year later. And unfortunately, they made some changes, and they can be a little confusing. If you read the Jumpstart kit and you're like, wait a second, that wasn't auto-fire rules. They were talking about for 3-round bursts. Yes, that's because 3-round bursts does not exist in the core rulebook. Full auto rules do. And they do not work the same way, unfortunately. So, I can go into more auto fire in combat and stuff later, but that's one of the differences is in the jumpstart. It talks about 3-round bursts. There's no 3-round bursts in the core rulebook. There's auto fire. There's the headshot penalty in the jumpstart kit was a -6. In the core rulebook, they have what's called aim shots, where you specifically aim for either like the head or to shoot a weapon out of somebody's hand. That is actually a -8 in the core rulebook. So it's actually a little bit harder to do it in the core rulebook than the Jumpstart kit, but there's a lot more effects that you can do with aim shots. The other thing is the shooting difficulty values based on range are also different from the Jumpstart kit to the rulebook. So the other two examples I knew about, I didn't realize the range differences for difficulty values were different until I was reading through, and I was like, oh wait, this is different. So I want to share with you. This is a easy reference page that it was in the player's handbook, was in the Jumpstart kit. And this is really cool. This has it shows what we talked about with skill checks. It talked about post skill checks. It has short notes for ranged attacks and melee attacks. But if you look at page 2, unfortunately, it has the oh wait, no, hold on. Maybe it is page 1. Where is that? Yeah, automatic fire. It has 3-round bursts and suppressive fire. Those don't exist in the core or in the red rulebook. So, and that range to hit difficulty. So that's where different DVs are based on range. They're similar, but they are not the same in the core rulebook. In fact, I prefer the ranges in the core rulebook because pistols from that 0 to even the ranges are different in there. But the range for a pistol for close range is a DV for 13 instead. So I wanted to provide those to you, though, just as a handy sheet and stuff like that. But yeah, that's that. So lastly, let's talk about improving your character. This is the last thing we'll cover real quick. This is page 409 of this is actually tucked away in the GM section of Cyberpunk, but I think it's really important to know. basically how Cyberpunk Red works is that their improvement is based on a scientific paper written in 1996 talking about the different types of players. So it divided players into 4 categories called the warriors, the socializers, the explorers, and the role players. And it asks everybody, and I asked everybody here too, to take these 4 squares at the bottom of page 409. In each of the sections, warriors, explorers, socializers, role players, there are a list of different, 4 to 6 sentences in each of those that kind of describe different things that people like to do in games. And it asks everybody to circle 5 things. Out of any of those boxes, circle 5 different things. And whatever box you circled the most in is your primary play style. And whatever box you circled the secondary in is your secondary play style. So what was everybody's primary play style? And what was everybody's secondary play style?
I circled 2 and 2 in explorers and socializers.
Great.
So
you're tied.
I guess they're tied for primary and secondary.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine I think was, if I'm remembering right, explorers primary and role players secondary. I think.
Yeah. That's perfect. So you like to explore the world and then roleplay your character.
What page was this on?
It was page 409.
409, thank you. Sorry, yeah, I was
at
like...
the bottom
where
of page
is that?
409. Christian, did you fill that out as well?
Yeah, I posted it.
Oh, perfect.
Discord.
Oh yeah, so your main one was warriors, and then your other 3 were divided.
I don't. I could go. I could go any way with the other 3, to be honest. It all just depends. But probably like role play.
Yeah.
After warriors.
That's perfect. So the reason why that's all important is I'm going to show you. There's a chart at the bottom on page 410 at the top of 411. And I just shared it because I made a little cutout, a little handout in Roll20 for you guys. So as you can see, at the end of each mission, it specifically says at the end of each mission, you earn improvement points based on how well you guys did. And it goes from 10 to 80. And if you look at the leftmost, it's group. So specifically, most of the time, it's going to be group. So what if it was like a 10, group did not succeed in mission, but tried valiantly. But if you got an 80, group's mission was a legendary, accomplishing all of the mission goals set forth and also all side goals of the session. Group also showed exceptional cooperation and teamwork. So basically, it's usually done by group. But if people specifically shout out or say oh, this person did really well in their specific category of what they want to do, then that works as well. I'm oh, well, I think the group got a 50. The group accomplished most of the mission goals extremely well with a few stellar moments. If I say, yeah, you guys did 50, you did really well, but maybe Christian's oh, but Ashley, she did really good at Ashley, what was your main thing again? Was it Explorer?
And socializing. We'll say exploring.
Exploring. Well, what was your main one though? It's supposed to be about your main.
She said exploring.
Call it exploring.
Oh, exploring. Okay, cool. So then, say Christian's oh, well, Ashley, though, players' use of investigation or exploration to uncover an important person, place, clue, or thing was critical to the entire party in this game session. So, Christian goes, well, Ashley, if she didn't find out that this hacker was in the system and doing this thing and found out where he was, well, then Dan would have never shot him and Christian would have never been able to take over the system. Then we could say, oh, well, Ashley then gets a 70 from the Explorer category because she did so well with that. So that's kind of how it kind of works, is that generally it's by group, but then like it can be divided individually that way, depending on how everybody feels. Ultimately, as the GM, I get final say, but I think that's generally how it kind of works. And I just shared with everybody, this is at the bottom of page 411, right underneath that big chart. This is how you take those improvement points and you spend them. So this is basically how you level up in Cyberpunk. Depending on like how much you want to rank up different skills or your role ability rank, this is how much points each cost for each level. So as you can see, like a level 1 in a skill is only 20 points, but a rank 6 in a skill is like 120. So like this is how you rank everything up, and it goes from a scale of 1 to 10. As you can see, like the ×2, it even has like how much the ×2 stuff is worth. But then also what's really important is your role ability rank. This is how you rank up your main role ability and get it even higher, but also how you multi-class and go into other roles. It takes at least a 60 to get one rank in a different class. And that's super important. So
You might have mentioned this, but for the improvement point table, is that done at the end of every session, at the end of every mission?
mission.
Okay.
Mission specifically. That's what they say. So, yep.
Cool. I think that's a good start. Is there anything else you want to cover?
Only thing I was going to say is like we talked about this in Call of Cthulhu, but Cyberpunk, you play hard and fast. So one of the greatest things about having like the Street Rat templates is that you can make a character really quick if your character dies. And it specifically says like death can happen very quickly and very suddenly. We didn't have any characters die in Call of Cthulhu. We had a few people go a little bit insane and have some freakouts, but like that's one of the things I want to prep for you guys too, is that your character may die. Cyberpunk has a notorious history of characters dying, so just be ready to make another character offhand or already have a backup. So that's a good rough start and a good session 0, I think, for Cyberpunk. We can cover like combat when we get to it in session 1. We can cover net running when that kind of comes up and everything. But yeah, that's all I had to say.
Sounds good. Excited to come back next week with the fully formed characters and everything.
Yes.
Is there anything we need to know about like the first mission that we need to incorporate?
Yes, thank you. So the first mission that we're doing is called The Apartment. It starts you guys off in your own apartment. So basically, all of you live on the 3rd floor of this apartment building with a variety of different people. So the thing you want to know, and the thing we'll have to decide between now and next week, is one of you owns the building. Only one of you. You own the building, and whether you inherited it or something like that, it came to you for one reason or another, and you own the building, and everybody else just lives there. But your crew...
The whole apartment building or the singular apartment?
No, the whole building.
Okay.
Yeah. So everybody else is paying rent to you. But you don't really make any money to it because a lot of like your rent and stuff goes to the a different solo character there that is the bodyguard and keeps the booster gangs, because you're close to the combat zone, so you're constantly fending off like rival gangs and people who are just robbing you.
Okay.
So yeah.
It's not a profitable business.
It's not. It's really not. So yeah, I don't know who would own the building, but one of you owns the building. So we can always figure that out next week. So
sounds good.
Yeah. So, but yeah. So, did you guys have any questions left for session 0 or anything before we take off? Before we start the apartment next week?
No, not at the moment.
I had one question about improvement points.
Yeah.
So if like you as the GM decide that the group gets 50 points, but then Christian is like, Ashley should get 70 points in exploring. Yeah. So then does that mean that I would get 120 points, or would I get 70 points?
Yes. Yeah,
if
you would only get 70.
That.
Yes.
And is it per person? Like if you say the group gets 50 points, is it like each person gets 50 points, or is it 10 points per person or whatever?
Nope, each person gets 50.
So you can get a max of 80 points after a mission.
Yeah.
So then you have to really be saving up your improvement points if you're running to do, some much leveling up,
Exactly.
especially later. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Cool. All right. Well, hey, thanks everybody for tuning in for our session 0 on Cyberpunk Red. Very excited. I think I mentioned this before. I love the kind of crunchiness of Cyberpunk Red. I think it flows really nice. I don't think it's too difficult, and a lot of these flowcharts and stuff we were going through today make it really easy. So, looking forward to going more into combat and net running when we do the apartment level and stuff like that. But until next time, do we have any credits to give out? Thank you to Roll20 as always for letting us play this game on here. Check out R Talsorian Games. They're teasing a new product right now, August 31st, which just so happens to be my birthday. They're coming out and revealing something that's actually they teased it for me when I got these dice and everything. Wonder if I can show this QR code. Screenshot the screen right now and do the QR code. I'm not sure if it's gonna work, but you should be able to find the cool site sometime soon. But anyways, so they have something they're teasing. Check them out. This is a cool game. Phantom Liberty's right around the corner. DLC for Cyberpunk 2077 and the 2.0 update. Super excited for that. Check that out. Yeah. Anybody else have any final notes or?
No, I'm all good.
Cool. All right. Thanks everybody. Keep on learning, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.